All right, good evening. This is your community's house. We are all guests in it here to serve our community. My name is Mike Little, Mayor for the District of North Vancouver. It's my pleasure to welcome everybody here to the regular meeting of Council for Monday, November 1st at 7 o'clock. Council, we have an agenda that's been circulated. Are there any errors or omissions from the agenda as presented? Hearing none, will a member of Council please move adoption of the agenda? Moved by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Hanson. Call the question on that motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. I just need to get the spotlight back up so I can see the councillors. All right, we'll work on that. Great. Council, there is a set of minutes that have been circulated. This is for, or sorry, 3 sets of minutes. This is October 4th, regular, October 12th, public, and October 18th, regular meetings of Council. Council, are there any errors or omissions from those 3 sets of meeting minutes? And I just want to be clear, one of those sets was there was an addenda done to the October 12th meeting minutes. They were originally presented last week, and we did have an amendment to that, but we're putting forward the 3 as presented. Okay, is there a member of Council that wishes to move all 3 sets of minutes?
So moved, Your Worship.
Okay, by Councillor Back, second by Councillor Hanson. Call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, Council, at this point I'm going to go to public input. We have 3 members of the public that have signed up to speak, 2 at the front end of the meeting and 1 at item 8.5. And so the 2 speakers at the beginning of the meeting, first I'm going to have Hazen Colbert participating virtually, followed by Katarzyna, sorry about that, Katarzyna Lieber also participating virtually. Okay, Mr. Colbert, can you hear me? Your mute just went back on, Mr. Colbert.
Council, can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. It's very light. If you could speak nice and loudly, Mr. Colbert, that would be great.
Please don't include this in my time, but I want to tell you of a technical problem. I'm the first speaker tonight, and the technical problem is this. When the first speaker gets promoted to the panel, there's about a 15 to 20 second wait. So when you say, Mayor, when you say you're next to speak, and I'm the first speaker, what happens is the clerk promotes me to the panel, and then I have to wait 20 seconds while Zoom actually promotes me to the panel. And that's why you don't hear from me. I'm actually waiting for my computer to reconnect.
Okay.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm speaking on 2 matters tonight, and the first matter is an agenda item. That agenda item is the Riverside project, and I'm supportive of this advancing to a public hearing. And I understand that there are a couple of issues with the site, which includes how do we pay for the development requirements, and that's easily done. I'm sure that Mr. Joyce will figure out how to make the development across the street, the Darwin project, pay for the development requirements on Riverside. I also have taken a look at the properties immediately south of that project, and there are 3 homes, single-family homes, 2 of which were built in 1928 and held by together by Binder Klein, and would likely, if BC Hydro had to disconnect them for failure to pay their electric bill, would likely not meet the requirements for reconnection. So there's no issues there. So I support this project moving forward. Now I move on to my second issue, and that second issue is the housing needs report, which was provided to Council last week in a workshop. And there's an issue in that housing needs report, and I'm hoping that Mr. Milbourne can address that tonight as we agreed. And he will disclose that that housing needs report includes a development application from Crombie REIT for the redevelopment of the Safeway site in Lynn Valley. That redevelopment proposal, which is a 12-story building about 450 to 500 units, an FSR of 2.5. Yeah, so I'll turn it over now to Mr. Milbourne, as we agreed that, or if staff, planning staff, whomever is there, can actually now make this project, put this project into the public domain. But thank you, Mayor Little. I'm done.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, and I have no such notice from our staff about a comment on that. I think that there is not currently an application from the Safeway site that I'm aware of. Mr. Stewart, can you add any comment to that, or Mr. Milburn? Is there a current application on the Safeway site in Lynn Valley that Mr. Colbert's referring to?
Your Worship, I don't recall any agreement to discuss the information tonight. We have had interest in discussions in the past with the property owner, and we know are interested in having a consultation with the community and moving forward with a preliminary application sometime in the coming weeks or months. And more information will be provided to the public once they have submitted a complete application and have prepared the information and are ready to go up to them.
Okay, so it's just not that there has been some discussion, and of course I recall the Safeway site has proposed ideas going back more than 10 years, but we're anticipating an application possibly in the near future, but at this point we don't have one. Okay, so the next speaker I have is Katarzyna Lever. Katarzyna, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, Your Worship.
And I apologize, it's the first time I've come across that spelling. It's how do you say that correctly?
It's Katarzyna.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Good luck, Mike.
For short, it's Kasia, which I'm quite happy to accept.
Welcome, Kasia. You have 3 minutes to address the council.
I would like to start by thanking your worship and councillors for allowing me the opportunity to speak at tonight's meeting. An email providing more detail on my proposal has been forwarded to council@dnv.org, as well as input@dnv.org. My husband and I were very proud and excited to learn from the district's website about the DNV's goals and initiatives surrounding urban agriculture and sustainable food systems, particularly the district's, and I quote, commitment to establishing an integrated food system through initiatives around urban agriculture, producing, processing, and distributing food in and around the city. As residents of the districts, entrepreneurs, and parents, we hugely support the intent to bring healthy food production into our community. And already being hobby farmers, we thought that this would be a wonderful opportunity for our family to create a business which supports the development and economic vitality of our community, as well as that of our family. We were surprised then to learn that our current zoning bylaws do not allow for any type of commercial farming in the district. Reference DNV zoning bylaws, section 403A, use is prohibited in all zones. Item 1A indicates commercial agricultural purposes, including the growing of mushrooms, as prohibited use of land or buildings. We propose that an amendment be made to our existing zoning bylaws to permit commercial agriculture, in the form of indoor vertical farming in both residential and commercial areas of the district of North Vancouver, thus enabling the development of urban farming and sustainable food production within the district. Vertical or indoor farming is an ideal type of urban farming. It is a form of controlled environment agriculture that consists of growing crops indoors in vertically stacked layers using electrical lighting. Many crops are perfect candidates for this type of farming. It is also an incredibly viable home-based business as it does not require a lot of space, it is not vulnerable to seasonal changes, and it does not impose on neighborhoods. Additionally, these farms remain compliant with section 405 of the DNV zoning bylaws, home occupations, most notably that they do not need to occupy more than the maximum floor area indicated by section 405 of the zoning bylaws. All materials, equipment, and products can easily be contained within a building. They do not emit vibration, noise, heat, glare, odor, or electrical interference. They do not generate air pollution or excessive traffic. I'm certain that we are not the only ones who are eager and excited to become a community partner and work with the District of North Vancouver to help bring urban farming and healthy local food production into our communities. But we can only do this if our existing zoning bylaws are amended to include commercial agriculture, at least in the form of indoor farming, as a permitted use of land or buildings or structures in all zones. I thank you again for your time.
Thank you for your comments, Kasia. Okay, council, those are the speakers that have signed up to speak at the beginning of the meeting. Is there anyone else here present wishing to speak? We'll have more time in the public input period. I don't see any hands virtually or here in the council chamber, so I'll thank the public for their participation in this evening's meeting, and I'm going to move on with the agenda. First item of regular business that we have this evening is under reports from councillor staff, bylaw 8. This is item 8.1, bylaw 8533, Mount Seymour Lions Housing Society, Bowron Court and Apex Avenue Housing Agreement. This item is up for adoption, so there's no debate on the matter. So I'm going to, will a member of council move adoption? Moved by Councillor Curran, second by Councillor Hanson. Call the question on the matter. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, council. The next item we have is item 8.2. This is bylaws 8538 and 8539, rezoning and development cost charge waiver bylaw for a social housing development site at the Riverside site. Looking to staff to open us up on this discussion. Mr. Hartford, welcome.
Thank you, Your Worship. As a brief overview of this application, on September 27th, Council directed staff to proceed with a district-led rezoning process on this site. This site is referred to as the Riverside site, and the proposal was to allow for a social housing development of up to 6 stories in height. The proposal requires consideration of 2 bylaws that are before council this evening: a rezoning bylaw to change the zoning for the site, and a development cost charge waiver bylaw that reduces DCCs to 0 for not-for-profit housing on the property. The site consists of 4 district-owned lots and is located northeast of the intersection of Riverside Drive and Old Dalderton Road in Maplewood Village Center. The site is approximately 27,000 square feet in area and is currently undeveloped. The vision and future use of the land is outlined in the district's official community plan and the Maplewood Village Center plan. The OCP and the Maplewood plan designate the site 6, which envisions medium-rise multifamily development at a density of up to approximately 2.5 FSR. The Maplewood plan also specifies a suggested building height and outlines options for new active park space and trail connections to the north and east of the site. The lots are currently zoned Park, Recreation, and Open Space, or PRO, which reflects the current state of the property. This zoning does not reflect the intended future use outlined in the OCP. The lots are not designated as park and are not protected as park by bylaw. As a result, council is eligible to consider changing the zoning and use of the site to reflect OCP. Bylaw 8.
Your mic, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. Your Worship, I think you have 2 mics going on your station, and as a result, we hear a lot of the background noise. Maybe you have to help me do that. Thank you.
Bylaw 8538 to create the new CD 139 zone reflects the plan provisions for a 6-story apartment building. This zone allows an option for social gathering uses to accommodate organizations such as Thrive Family Center and the North Shore Disability Resource Center as potential users of some of the space in the project. The proposed building form could accommodate approximately 60 to 90 rental units, with the final unit count being influenced by factors such as the potential community uses in the building, unit sizes, and the developable site area, accounting for road areas and building setbacks. Water, storm, and sanitary sewer infrastructure all currently exist within the Riverside Drive road allowance, but additional work would be necessary to provide vehicle access to the site from Old Dalderton Road, as well as upgrades for municipal infrastructure along the Riverside Drive frontage. This work is anticipated as a separate district capital project, and costs would be reviewed in the context of the annual district capital planning process and any applicable grants. As this is a district-led rezoning application, there is no developer applicant or housing partner at this time. Should the project advance, many of the details such as building design, siting, rental rates, unit mix, and accessible design would be resolved through the development permit process and secured in the required lease agreement. If the site is rezoned, it is expected that a submission will be made in response to the Metro Vancouver expression of interest, which has a closing date of December 31st of this year. If successful, a partnership would then be explored for the social housing project, and the district would enter into negotiations with a nonprofit housing provider for a long-term lease at a nominal rate. Under this arrangement, the district would retain ownership of the land and the housing would be operated by the nonprofit provider in accordance with the lease provisions. The two bylaws are recommended for first reading, and the rezoning bylaw is recommended for referral to the required public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hartford. I will be moving the motion. Is there a seconder on the matter? Seconded by Councillor Hanson. Okay, my comments on the matter, I made some initial comments at an earlier meeting, but it has been a goal to get a Metro Vancouver project on the North Shore. I hope that this can be the site for that. Metro Vancouver has some fantastic housing, low-income housing opportunities throughout the region, but we haven't been able to land one in the district of North Vancouver, and I think the intent here is to clear the way for that possibility. It also addresses an issue that we came up with the Delbrook site, which was that it was always complicated to have a public zoning process going through by the potential operators of the site or by the operators of the site, because while the community wanted to talk about access, egress, massing, all of those kinds of issues, the very well-meaning, fantastic social housing partner, they needed to talk about the need in the community, and they needed to talk about the types of services that was being offered. And it always created a very difficult situation when they were the applicant. And so I do support this way of proceeding where the district goes ahead as the applicant and makes the changes necessary for a partner to go through their own process once we've cleared the issues of access, egress, form, and massing generally, and given them the ability to not have to go through a much more complex public process. And so I am supportive of both the process and what is being proposed here at this site, with at least as an envelope. I think that 6 stories on this site would be too tall. I think that it should be stepped back and it should be a more modest size, but I'm okay with the wording here, and I do think 4 to 6 stories, it's fair to put that out there so we can see what could be on the site, but I probably would lean more towards 4 or 5 stories than the full 6, just because I think the heights would be so stark on that point on Riverside Drive. But I'm also eager to see improvements on Riverside Drive. It's an area that has been a challenge since I was a kid playing soccer at Maplewood, where you'd come out onto this shoulder and the lighting was terrible, and it was there was this rise on Riverside that always made it hard for people to see. And we just have to do a better job of improving the pedestrian experience in and through this space, and hopefully this project will still allow us to make those changes in the community. I believe the seconder on the matter was Councillor Hanson.
I look forward to the initiative with Metro Vancouver Housing. This proposal and this bylaw that we have in front of us right now is a step towards potentially 60 to 90 affordable rental units in a location of the district where those rental units will be, affordable rental units will be very much and are very much needed. There's also the potential for other amenities such as childcare. I look forward to the public input. I believe it's a very good project, a very good cause that we're pursuing here. This time, I'm not taking a position on height or other aspects of the built form for the time being, but very happy to support this bylaw going forward and to the rezoning going to public hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Back.
Thank you, Your Worship. Not to repeat too much, because I do agree with your comments as well as Councillor Hansen's comments so far. I think this is an exciting opportunity to potentially bring some below market housing with the Metro Vancouver housing project into this area. I like the location of this particular site for its proximity to services, amenities, and jobs in our community. I, like yourself, Your Worship, I think the improvements to Riverside Drive have been needed for a very long time for both pedestrians and cyclists, and just making that whole area safer. This is an exciting opportunity to do that. I also like the potential to maybe partner with an organization like Family Services, and I know they have their Thrive Center currently at Maplewood Farm, but we'll be looking for a new home, and I think this could potentially be a good fit for them as well. So I think 60 to 90 units of this sort of housing in this location is something that we could be very proud of as a council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Curran.
Thanks. Yeah, this is just the next step, I guess, from the phase that we initiated last time. So I'm pleased to see this moving forward. I think it is important to note how well this aligns with some of the targeted OCP action items that we had. And I think completing these complete communities that are on more frequent transit routes is really important. And this location, I like the potential, as Councillor Back pointed out, to partner with potentially another social service provider, as well as the opportunity to look at childcare in this area. And I think these are difficult decisions. I will always grieve the loss of any green space, but I think completing these town centers is really important to do that. And as I mentioned before, there are unique opportunities, as one of the speakers talked about, local food security, but looking at how we change the way that we use land surrounding it. I think there are some potentials. And as staff pointed out, the environmental assessment on this space indicated that this was not, there were not any particularly sensitive in areas found in this exact location. So yeah, I think there's some great benefits, and I look forward to moving it forward.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. I see no further speakers at this time. Councillor Murray.
Sorry, my dog's barking now. First of all, I want to be really clear, because the North Shore News wasn't clear with the last article where they wrote that not all North Vancouver District councillors were in favor of affordable housing, which was absolutely incorrect and untrue. I've probably been one of the more vocal advocates over the last 25 years in regards to looking after people that live here and affordability. As one of the longest councillors on this council, and somebody that's lived in this community my entire life, I've seen people being pushed out, and it's something that I've always fought for. So loud and clear, North Shore News, I'm in favor of affordable housing. My challenge with this, though, is that we have, at the beginning of this term, said that we were going to be reviewing the Maplewood Plan. And in my opinion, the Maplewood Plan, and some of you are new, some of you are green to this council, the Maplewood Plan was anything but affordable. I think that this rezoning on this section of land in this area triggers that plan to move forward. It sets a line in the rear of the existing developed lots on Old Dollarton. And probably a lot of you won't know this, but you know, I think Councillor Hansen, Mayor Little, and Councillor Forbes will remember what Old Dollarton used to look like. It had houses all the way down it, and it had a farm on one side. Across the street, actually, on Old Dollarton, you can still see the remnants of an old farm. And the comments from Councillor Curran in regards to looking at the land use differently, that's exactly what the review of the Maplewood Plan would do. But right now it sets a plan of artesian commercial development with more condos and expensive condos. On the west side of Riverside Drive, what's envisioned And what some of the development companies that are coming forward, namely Darwin, are 12 to 15-story towers in their application, is what I believe they're going to try to bring forward. We talk about frequent transit network. Maplewood has just been cut from TransLink. My daughters work at Stong's, and instead of standing outside of Stong's to catch the bus to come home into Blue Ridge, they walk down at night because they work at night. One's getting off in about 10 minutes or in 2 minutes, and one's getting off at 9, and they walk down to Mount Seymour Parkway. I totally concur that the road needs to be dealt with. It should have been dealt with years ago, and we could have front-ended it, but we didn't. I think in light as well of the unknown in regards to Maplewood North, where the previous application envisioned 4,000 cars coming into the Maplewood North site. We have no idea what that addition to reserve is going to look like. We have no idea what the Tsleil-Waututh, if they are successful with the addition to reserve, are going to bring forward in regards to that project. And we are already backed up again with traffic. The Seymour has 2 ways in and out. We need to understand what is happening with the whole area instead of planning and making decisions in silos, council. You know, all of this money, $250 million that was spent on this interchange, we're still backed up the cut, and we're still backed up into Seymour, like all the time. It's done nothing. And now we are taking 40 acres on the $1.10. Plus, I think we are moving ahead. I think planning wants to move ahead with the existing Maplewood plan, and that's why it hasn't come forward for review yet. And we've only got 1 year left in this term. In addition, I will let you know that 25 years ago, 26 years ago, when Guard saved all of the trails in Mountain and Cove Forest, one of the absolute major arguments of saving that property was a migratory bird path that started on the base of Mount Seymour and went all the way down to the Maplewood mudflats. And guess what we're doing? We're completely obliterating everything from the property line below Canland all the way down to the mudflats. The land at Maplewood North will be clear cut. We've already clear cut for the fire training center, and now we are going to be clear cutting what's left of that area in behind Old Dollarton. So, I mean, we've got 2 brownfield sites, one coming up on Mount and Highway, because I assume there's going to be majority support for the tower next to the old fire hall on Mountain Highway. There's going to be a brownfield site there, and then there's going to be a brownfield site in Inter-River at the fire training center. They're both service. They're close to schools. This site is not close to schools. You have to drive to go to 2 schools. Kenneth Gordon is not a public school; it's a private school. I'm totally supportive of Metro Vancouver housing, absolutely, and I'm totally supportive of affordable housing. God knows we need it, and this council has done more for affordable housing than the last 2, which did nothing. But we should not be planning the way we're planning. We should look at the whole area and react and respond to what has changed at Maplewood North. Because the previous 2 councils allowed industrial land to be rezoned for residential and said, oh, we'll make up the loss down the street at Maplewood North. And guess what? We have no idea whether that's going to happen or not. So keep the residential on the west side. Look at what the existing land holds right now in the zoning, which is light industrial. We need to make sure that we've got enough to create jobs and employment. We need to make sure that we're getting this right. We've got 2 other sites that are more appropriate for this kind of housing, that rather than taking an unserviced treed lot in an area that we need to look for employment. I'm really disappointed how this has moved forward, and I don't think it's a responsible way. I will support going to hearing on this, but I think we really need to let the community know exactly what is going on in that area, because it's a great unknown, and you know, even Metro Vancouver has not included this in in their town centers as a frequent transit route, and probably for good reason.
Councillor,
Because it's
we're well over.
bottlenecked.
Councillor, we're well over 6 minutes. I have to press on. Thank you for your comments. Councillor Forbes, you're next.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to just confirm, because the North Shore News also implied that I was against this affordable housing, and it absolutely is not true. I've been fighting for affordable housing. I was there at the beginning of, or not the very beginning, but I was there fighting for the Emery people. So I absolutely want affordable housing. I absolutely want Metro Vancouver project on the North Shore, because we don't have one. Again, my previous comments had to do with the congestion on Riverside. There's no sidewalks. It backs onto a school play field. We just recently put in the illuminators to try and protect the bicycle riders along there. And we did have other lots that this could be put on. And also same concern as Councillor Murray, that the Maplewood area plan has kind of been thrown up in the air, and we're not sure where it's going to land or what's going to happen with the ATR process that the Tsleil-Waututh is going through right now. And we had designated that area that was going to be a light industrial with employment in there, and we've lost that. So now where are we putting light industrial, and now where are we going to do employment lands? So it's kind of like the cart before the horse. I would rather have had the infrastructure improved on Riverside before we actually started discussing developments that might happen in there. Sorry, that's my cat. The other thing I just wanted to mention is we spent a great deal, or at least I did, with a few other councillors, including Councillor Murray and Councillor Curran, concerned when the fire hall development first came up, because we were concerned about there are a couple of wildlife paths that come down from the embankment up behind the fire hall. And we were really concerned about not intruding on that and protecting the wildlife as much as we could, so we're not dispersing them somewhere else or losing them altogether. And so I think this developing this lot right now for this kind of a project kind of puts a target on the area. And I'm not sure, I'm not saying I'm just saying that it kind of puts a target on the area, and we haven't even done any planning to see if that's exactly what we want. And I'm concerned about the wildlife corridor that we were trying to protect before. Now we're developing and clear cutting. So again, I want a metro project. I want affordable housing. I just think infrastructure on the street should have come first, and we should have planned, given that we're kind of up in the air with the ATR. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. The second time, Councillor Curran.
Thank you. Just a couple clarifying questions from staff. And I guess a comment about one of the reasons I'm such an advocate of green roofs is that they are great migratory and other birds can use green roofs. So I think that is a good solution in the built form, as I mentioned last time. And certainly the wildlife corridors are important. This is a large area. So my two questions for staff would be, of that overall area, that is previously developed, correct? I mean, this has all been developed previously. This is a very small footprint within that overall area. So maybe staff could comment on that. And the second part was if you could please comment on the frequent transit network, if there's been changes to that Councillor Murray mentioned something about it being taken off the there's been a change apparently recently. I'm not sure if that's COVID related or if
Service has been cut. Bus service has been cut.
So if staff could just mention or comment on the designation of that area in terms of future transit accessibility, please.
Mr. Hartford, can you comment?
Your Worship, Councillor Curran, I would appreciate some clarification on your first question. Are you trying to get a sense of the proportion that this development site represents relative to the broader Maplewood plan area?
Yeah, well, I guess just talking about in the OCP, this area was always designated for residential mixed use, I believe. But there was a large area that was envisioned being parks. And so this basically is the same as the OCP has always been envisioned for that area in terms of the space that was going to be protected and turned into more of a passive park, I believe. Maybe a little bit more about the parks planning specifically for that area. If you have any comments on the wildlife corridor as well, that was not identified in this area. Everything is important for animals. That's why I'm looking at the way we can use the built form differently.
Your Worship, Councillor Curran, I appreciate the additional comments. We don't have those details at hand, but we can certainly incorporate some information on both of those issues for the public hearing presentation, should the project be advanced to public hearing. So I hope that is sufficient for this evening. On the transportation issue, our community planning staff are available to make some comments on frequent transit network and the Metro 2050 approach to transportation.
Smith?
Thank you. Through the chair, I'll try to provide a little information with regards to the frequent transit network and the current planning with regards to transportation there. The frequent transit network is the level of service that runs currently over the Second Narrows and into Phibbs Exchange. It doesn't run currently into Maplewood, but there is a proximity within walking distance to the frequent transit network that is considered for Metro Vancouver, and some of the comments we have that coming up later tonight in terms of the major transit growth corridors. TransLink is currently updating their plan, Transport 2050, and introducing a new concept called the MTN, the Major Transit Network. And the portion of the frequent transit network that runs near Maplewood will convert to that. And it is anything within a kilometer of that is eligible to become a frequent transit development area within the Metro 2050.
Can I just comment on that as well? I think specifically what Councillor Murray was referring to is the old, it was the C15, then it became the 215 route, which we have the 212 route along Dollarton in front of the Stonks Place, but it ends up along the Dollarton corridor. We have the 211 behind up on Mount Seymour, but there used to be a connector that would come through, sweep in front of the Stonks site, go up Riverside and take you up into the Seymour area. And so people who are headed towards the upper Mount Seymour Parkway area now have to walk out to Mount Seymour Parkway rather than getting on at Riverside. I think that's the change in service that was being commented on that has at least temporarily been suspended, which is odd because the priorities expressed at TransLink over the last while have been that they don't want to see any cuts in services, and yet we are seeing cuts in services on the North Shore, including our UBC direct bus as well as the 215. Okay, I see no further speakers at this time. So I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Thank you very much, Council. And we have contemplated a potential public hearing date. I'll check in with the clerk on that.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, tentatively scheduled for Tuesday, November 23rd at 7 p.m.
Again, that's tentative, and so we'll be doing the required advertising leading up to it, but at that point, that's the date we're looking forward to on this matter. Thank you, Council. The next item that we have up for discussion is item 8.3, which is the Childcare BC New Spaces Fund Grant application. And looking to staff, I see Ms. Atva has joined the meeting. Ms. Atva, can you share your comments?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Little, members of council, and all who are tuning in today. Thank you so much for the chance to bring this forward. This is a grant opportunity, as you mentioned, through the Childcare BC New Spaces Fund to support the creation of new childcare spaces in the district. What staff are seeking today is council's approval to submit the application for a grant that would support the construction of a new shared use field house and childcare facility at Eldon Park. So the proposal is that this new facility would replace the existing field house, which is nearing the end of its life, and replace it with a facility that would include, in addition to field house space, 37 new childcare spaces, 12 for infant toddlers and 25 for preschool aged kids. The field house component would include washrooms, a concession, a multi-purpose storage, multi-purpose room, and storage space. The estimated cost of this new shared use facility is $3.5 million, with a maximum grant available for the childcare portion up to just under $1.5 million. The remaining funds required, which would be approximately $2 million, would be funded or proposed to be funded from a combination of community amenity contributions, potentially lease payments, other district reserves, and the infrastructure reserve. Council approval is required in support of an application before it can be submitted, and it's due on the 16th of November, so in 2 weeks, and a decision will be made by the province by March of 2022. If our grant is successful, detailed planning would begin after that, construction beginning as early as spring 2023, with a target occupancy date for the kids to move in the summer of 2024. The project aligns with a number of council policies and priorities, including the recent Child Care Action Plan from last year. The recommendation before you today is that staff are directed to submit a grant application to support the creation of new childcare spaces, and that the district commit to its share just over $2 million to the total project cost of estimated cost of $3.5 million. Thank you very much for the time to give this overview.
Thank you, Ms. Atfa. Council is looking for someone to make a motion. I see Councillor Back. Councillor Back, what's your motion?
I'll move the staff recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on the matter? I see Councillor Hanson. So Councillors Back and Hanson. Councillor Back, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. I think we all know how needed childcare spaces are in our community. We've had presentations around our childcare strategy, and I'm living it firsthand these days. It's a real challenge, and we certainly need more childcare. I think this type of project, in terms of combining a building that's nearing the end of its life with some childcare, is a great concept. I think it will work well, and potentially could be done across the district or in other areas. I like the fact that you've got childcare like this in proximity to open space in a park like Eldon. So I think it's very worthwhile of our support at this stage. I think it could be maybe a model for, as I say, other parks across the district, and hopefully some upgrades to the washrooms there as well. I know that's a very well-used park, so would love to see that the washrooms are accessible and have a childcare change table. Couldn't think of the word, but just things like that. I think this could be the new style of washroom for these types of parks that do have aging facilities, and we know that across the community, many of our parks washrooms will need to be replaced in the coming years. So I think it's a great concept. Thank you, staff, for bringing this forward, and I'm pleased to support it.
Thank you, Councillor Back. Councillor Hanson.
Thank you very much, and I'd also like to thank staff for bringing this forward. From my point of view, this is a win-win. The province, if we are successful in the grant, will be subsidizing our district operations by $1.45 million. We receive the upgraded facilities, a new and expanded field house, upgraded washrooms, and at the same time we secure 37 childcare spaces, of which 12 are in the infant and toddler category. We hear over and over again about the critical nature of childcare in our community, and here is an opportunity for us to take a practical and tangible step in the direction of providing more childcare to those who need it in our community. I know that in some of the childcare presentations that we have heard, that the most acute need, if I remember correctly, is more to the east of the district. Having said that, I have no doubt that this is an area that will in which these 37 childcare spaces will be very much appreciated, very much needed, and will be in demand. And as Councillor Back said, perhaps it'll serve as a model for how we can secure some of the much needed childcare spaces off to the east of the district through collaboration with the provincial government and grant applications when available. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray.
When was the grant application posted? The process to apply? And stop my clock while we're waiting.
Thank you very much. It was fairly recent, within the last month, 2 months. So the deadline is November 16th again. So we've known about it.
Well, we're not giving ourselves a lot of time to talk about this. So we're going to be applying for a grant. Have we gone out to the first of all, is this childcare for the local community? Or is it a regional childcare facility?
Thank you very much to Councillor Murray through the mayor. If successful and we're able to secure the grant, build the facility, find an operator to operate the childcare facility, then our goal for sure is to have our childcare for district residents, but we would work with our childcare, with any selected childcare operator to make sure the needs are met. And the grant does identify priority target populations, and we would certainly work to fulfill those requirements.
So we've got a childcare for regional draw. Like, I would understand if this was before and after school care, if it was to support the local elementary school. It's sort of right in the center of the northern part of the neighborhood. Have we gone out? I mean, just on if we put a childcare in a house in a basement, we would go out to the community or to the neighborhood and ask them what their thoughts are. And according to the report, we're not going to do that until after we're successful with the grant. Like, we've gone out to stakeholders, but have we gone out to the neighborhood?
Thank you very much through Mayor Little. We have done a little bit of targeted stakeholder engagement, if you will, talking to the school, talking to the PAC, talking to North Shore Neighborhood House, who operates the after school care.
I guess my question, sorry, Ms. Atfa, I'm just cognizant of my time, and I'm not sure if clerks are stopping it when you answer the questions, but have we gone out to sort of the local neighborhood like we would on a regular licensed application for a daycare?
Thanks again through the mayor. We have not gone through to the broader community, but as the report identifies, if the grant is successful, we certainly do anticipate doing more targeted engagement with the community. We have talked to the Parks and Natural Space Committee as well to get a sense for comments, and heard just last week some of their questions and concerns.
And what were those? Because we don't have...
Councillor, we have been stopping your time, but I also have a hand from Mr. Milburn wanting to contribute. Mr. Milburn.
Thank you, Worship. Just wanted to add that the additional consultation requirements Councillor Murray refers to is when a single-family home license is changed. So this is essentially an increased amount of people that are residing in the home, or pardon me, not residing, but receiving care. In this case, this is a property where childcare is already permitted. And so council has already expressed through its zoning that childcare is an appropriate use for this site. And so there isn't the same level of consultation that is required when a single family property goes to a higher intensity of childcare. Thank you, Worship.
Okay, so I think I did bring up this point earlier, and it was about, and again, I have 3 children, so I understand the issues of childcare. But it is this policy that we've implemented several years ago where we allow childcare anywhere and everywhere. And I think we need to look at that. I think there needs to be a balance. I'd also like to understand what the questions are from the Parks and Natural Environment. So I'm understanding right now that if the grant is successful, this will be going ahead in this park, and consultation won't be necessary because of this existing policy. And I think the intentions of that policy originally were good. I just don't think we realized the impact of the policy in areas of the community. I know that the industrial community is feeling the impacts from additional, whole buildings that are being looked at for for-profit daycare. Daycare is an important part of our community, but we have to balance local community needs as well as the daycare needs. And I would also like to understand, Vancouver Coastal Health has suggested that it's been challenging to get licensed employees or employees to work in a lot of these childcares because the wage that they're being paid is minimal. So I just think we really need to understand the impact to that local neighborhood, and I'm sure that local neighborhood would like to understand what the impact is going to be before this is sort of decided, because I think it's being decided right tonight that this is going in if we're successful with the grant. And I think any concerns from the neighborhood would be, their comments would be too late. So I find this process to be a bit worrisome. And I think we need to have a chat about this. PENIAC, I'm sorry, Mayor Little, but at the beginning of our term, we were so committed to saying to our committees, we want to hear from you. I haven't heard from them. There's some small comment in this report that says, oh, PENIAC's been consulted. Well, what did they say? And apparently staff are going to be getting back to us with those comments and questions, but I'm not being asked to make a decision tonight. So I'd like to understand what those comments and questions are. PENIAC used to come to council and sit in the chamber and speak directly to us on all sorts of issues. I never see them. And we committed to them when we ran in the last election that we would hear them, and we're still not hearing them. I think this should be, and now I feel like we're in between a rock and a hard place because staff have given us, this was released 2 months ago. It's now the beginning of November, and we've got 14 days before this grant application has to be in, the deadline. This is not good service for consultation to the electorate, to the residents, to anyone. I just think this whole process is unfortunate, and I feel like we're just here to rubber stamp, and it's annoying.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Ms. Atva, you had a comment?
Thank you very much, Mayor Little. With your permission, I can share some of the comments that were heard from the committee. Just due to timing with the committee having their meeting last week, we were unable to provide a summary into the report. But with your permission, I can share very briefly some of the questions that came to staff from the committee.
Mayor Little, I'm sorry. If I hadn't have asked these questions, these comments would never have been included in the report.
Councillor Murray,
I have
this
is so out of line.
Councillor Murray, I have asked Ms. Atva for a response, and Ms. Atva is providing the response. Ms. Atva, sorry.
Thank you so much. There were 4 question topic areas. One was about the need for childcare in the Upper Capilano area. One was a comment, another was comment around parking conflicts during baseball season. Another was around the availability of the outdoor play space for the childcare facility after hours, to the public after hours on weekends, and a question about discussion around maintenance of the facility.
Thank you very much. Okay, next speaker I have is Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to agree with Councillor Murray's points. That wasn't what I was originally going to talk about, but we do seem to be getting not a lot of notice, and then we're asked to decide on things. So I agree that maybe we should be looking at the whole process here, that we get this information out to council and to the public as soon as we can. But my comment was going to be, and I always look at the numbers, but my comment was going to be, I had a question for Ms. Atfa. Did you say that if we won the grant, when did you think construction would start?
Thank you very much again through the mayor. The decisions will be made by grant applicants by the province in March. So after March of 2022, so we would be looking at detailed work after that, with construction likely 2023, and operation 2024.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes.
So I'm just looking at, like, I'm a bit leery because we're talking 3.5 million. And we haven't done our budget for next year yet. That's still to come. So I'm a bit nervous about committing. It says commit to our share of 2,020,000 of the total projected cost of 3,500,000. Maybe it's because the wastewater plant has gone nuts on us, but I'm a bit concerned when we say projected costs and our share, and it states a definite number for our share, and that this construction isn't going to start till next year, and the inflation and everything else is going up. So I realize that if they don't decide until March of next year, then we don't have much control over that. But to specifically commit to our share on a projected cost bothers me somewhat. So I would want that second half of the amendment taken out and just leave it at the first part where we're applying for the grant.
I can bifurcate the motion at the time we vote on the item. Mr. Stewart, your comment?
Your worship, council's been asked to support a grant application, not necessarily a project. There's lots of work that has to happen on this project. If we don't submit the grant application by the deadlines, and I appreciate council's frustration with that. Okay, but that's the world that we live in. This project will not go forward, most likely. So we're trying to just actually apply for a grant, see if there's some money, and then we can engage in all the kinds of consultations that we need. I would be surprised, based on Tina's comments, they were not opposing the project. They were asking questions about substance maintenance and minor things at the end of the day. We're merely asking council to support a grant application, and we have to commit. We have to indicate to the province that we'd be willing to put in our share if we're going to have them consider our application. That's what's in front of council tonight. I appreciate some of the other comments about process and all the rest of it, but I'll tell you that the process for affordable housing, social housing, and childcare, working with senior levels of government, regional government, is very difficult. It's very challenging. So what we do as a staff, if we identify an opportunity to get some money, we apply for it. Because I think we would be equally criticized by the community if we didn't. Somebody would say, well, why didn't you apply for that money? Well, we weren't sure exactly what we were going to do. And I think at this point, we need to focus on the fact this is just a grant application. If council decides that for a variety of reasons, including community opposition, we don't want to move forward, well, then we'll just do a restroom replacement. That's it.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Councillor Forbes, final comments?
Just, I liked your idea of bifurcating it, but Mr. Stewart has said that it's a requirement that we actually name a number here. So I guess there's no way around that. So.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Bond.
Thank you, Mayor Little. I also support this grant application moving forward. I think one of the key things here is that this decision that we're making today, should it be just for the grant or for a full replacement of this facility with a new washroom and a childcare space, is built upon so many previous decisions that council has made in support of getting to this point in time. You know, the report lists, the official community plan that has supporting policies for this. our OCP action plan that was just passed by council that has supporting policies for this, our childcare action plan, again, fully supported by council, that supports this type of facility and the need for this type of facility. There's our park space and open space strategic plan, even though it's almost 10 years old, the concept of these types of facilities and parks, again, supported by council. The strategic facilities framework, again, mixed use, making better use of our spaces when we need to replace existing facilities. Again, supported by council, supporting this decision, and our Coalition of Inclusive Communities declaration and membership that council also passed. So there's a lot of background work, a lot of policy work that council has all supported in the past that leads to a project like this being up for council decision. And I think that all of the points in the childcare plan, especially the gap in this neighborhood, is just as bad as in other neighborhoods in the district. I think there's somewhere between 60 to 90 infant toddler spaces needed in Upper Capilano over the next 9 years, closer to 100 preschool age, and then obviously before and after school care is a challenge as well. And this project would be just one small amount of the need that's been expressed in all of the previous plans and policies that council has unanimously supported. So definitely in favor of this. It's supported by a lot of background work, and I look forward to seeing the grant application, and hopefully it is successful.
Thank you very much. Just my own comments on the matter. I've been fairly aggressively pressing the school district to make space available to produce childcare in our community. I really think that area by an elementary school tied in with a school school property, it really is the gem. It's the one that we should be pressing most. It's the one that I think serves the community the most efficiently, because parents that are already attending a school site will have children at multiple ages, and it's easy to support it with a childcare option in and around those spaces. And so I've been pretty aggressive with the school district trying to get them to identify more sites. And this is a little bit of a putting your money where your mouth is to some degree, which is saying, what are we willing to do with district properties to produce more childcare spaces that can be supportive in the community? And, a lot of our park spaces are not well served. It's difficult to get sewerage and water services in that would be able to make a safe place that Vancouver Coastal Health is likely to support for a project. But here we have a situation where we can combine it with a field house that's desperately needed in that area and rebuild, and we already have the services in the ground. I'm a little shocked at the prices. A 3.5 million total project cost to produce a 3,500 square foot space. That is a shocking amount of money for that when you could produce a 3,500 square foot house for a fraction of that, maybe about 1/6 of that price. And so, I'm curious what kind of standard this is anticipated to be at, because that is a huge amount of money for a 3,500 square foot building that should have fairly Spartan amenities on the inside, I suspect. And I get that it's hard to attract contractors to get into this kind of business, but I'm still struggling with that size. However, I think that it's appropriate for us to go back and get the grant application. We certainly wouldn't be able to do this on our own. We need to do the field house upgrades regardless. And so I will be supportive of this moving to the next stage. Mr. Stewart, you have a comment?
Perhaps Mr. Joyce could comment about the difference between the childcare spaces and the washroom improvements. Because I think once you take into account the cost of the washroom improvements, you'll find that the cost of the childcare is reduced somewhat. So, Mr. Joyce, I don't know if you can comment on that.
Mr. Joyce, how expensive are your washrooms?
Bloody expensive.
I may not be, he may. Oh,
Sorry, that was me. That was my quiet voice.
Like he's having technical difficulties, convenient, because I do not see Mr. Joyce on the call at the moment.
So your worship, I will say that the cost of washrooms, because they generally have to be something that's going to last for 50 years, tend to be overly built. There's no question about that. But you have to do that. I remember a washroom in Ambleside when I was in West Vancouver, and I was just gobsmacked by the cost to replace the washroom. But they are expensive, but I would say this is a shared facility, so there's an opportunity to share in some of those costs. And I just think it makes sense, at least putting the application forward, and we can certainly provide more information to council as we move along the process. We're not guaranteed that we're going to get this money, and then we'll have to make some decisions as to what we're going to do or not do, and you know, whether or not, in fact, we're going to end up having to spend $1.5 million on a washroom replacement with no daycare because we didn't have the grant.
May I ask, Mr. Stewart, if we do not get the grant, are we still going to proceed with a $2 million field house upgrade at the space? Is that really where we would be left with? Is it $2 million for some bathrooms?
Yeah, you know what, they're field houses and washrooms. And if Mr. Joyce was on the call right now, I could comment more accurately on that. I have no idea what the actual cost just for a field house and washroom is at this point. But I will say that I even looked at Delbrook, for example. We're replacing the field house there. The costs generally across the region are very, very expensive. And we're going to find this with all of our washrooms. So please don't, commit me to $2 million for a washroom and $1.5 million for daycare, because I can't do that. But I will tell you that there are synergies when you can combine construction and multiple uses and in a park. So anyway, this is a policy decision for council, and it's actually not even that at this point. We're just asking to apply for the grant, and then we can have a policy discussion further. We don't have a lot of time because of the deadlines. So we have a small group at the district that looks at every announcement on every grant and tries to find money. And this is what we're doing. We're just trying to find money.
Yeah, and just my final comments on this. I get that this is just the environment that our partner governments have come up with, but this rush, that all of a sudden a tranche of money comes available. They want shovel-ready projects. They want them in the ground right now. They want them approved and want them underway. And you sit there and go, we have to be able to do at least medium-term, longer-term planning for these kinds of spaces. And particularly when you're contemplating a change in use of park space. And I get that this was contemplated in the zoning, that this could potentially be into in this space. But I do feel like this, like several councillors have mentioned, that it just feels like we get the inertia that takes place when a grant gets approved. Now all of a sudden you have to move, and now you have to make a decision in the next decision in a very short period of time. And so it has a tendency to really change our local priorities. And so I find it frustrating, but I get that that is not up to us. That is up to the funding partners in these kinds of projects. I just wanted to share my fellow councillors' frustration over that fact.
Yeah, your worship, just to be very clear, I mean, we don't make grant applications for things that we wouldn't do.
Yeah.
Normally, I just want to be clear. I mean, this is part of a washroom or a restroom, field house replacement, and we're just trying to add on to it. It's not things that, and I agree with you completely, and I can tell you over the last 30 years, how many projects on the Lower Mainland have come about as a result of grant money as opposed to actual local needs. And that's the frustrating part for both councils and municipal staff in lots of cases.
No, it's just, we set our priorities, and then the other partners cherry pick which ones they want to move to the top by grant participation. And it sometimes means that you're advancing things out of priorities. In this case, I think we have said very clearly that producing childcare spaces in the community is a priority. And as I said, I've been applying pressure to the school district to make some of their land available, and I think it's quid pro quo that we try to make some of our land available to help address the issue as well. Next speaker I have is a second time speaker, Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to address a little bit the financial aspects of this. So it's expensive, and we're being asked to contribute $2 million, and that's a lot of money. I get that. But at the same time, this is a grant application, and a $3.5 million project is being made available to us, assuming that we get the grant for $2 million. 42% of the project is being paid for by another party. So I appreciate that it's expensive, and I appreciate that it's hard to commit to such a large number. But from my point of view, if someone's willing to provide 42% of your funding, it becomes an awful lot more attractive from a financial point of view than if you were forced to bear the entire burden.
Thank you. Councillor Curran, a first-time speaker.
Thanks. I just wanted to speak a little bit about outcomes and just imagining if this were to proceed, that there would likely be some really happy kids and some people who had an opportunity to go to work in a really lovely spot. And I think having that, just looking towards where all of these policies lead us, I think could be to a great outcome. I'm happy to see, once again, staff align in the report how this helps us achieve other initiatives that we've set forward. I particularly am excited about the work around the Coalition of Inclusive Municipalities, making sure that our bathrooms are accessible, fully accessible for all genders, ages, and people with disabilities. And yeah, and I think this is the future of municipal and other planning, to look at multi-uses in buildings that previously had one purpose. Now they need to solve multiple problems because we have multiple problems to solve. So I think that as Mr. Stewart mentioned, this is a grant application, and as Councillor Hanson mentioned, it has it pays for a significant portion of the project if it's successful. So I want to thank staff for responding quickly when this became available. I know it's never ideal, but if I've learned one thing, it's that nothing is ever ideal. So we've got to make the best decisions that we can. And I think putting this forward makes a lot of sense. And hopefully it's successful.
Thank you very much, Councillor Curran. Councillor Murray, you've spoken your full time. Is there just a quick clarifying comment?
I just want to clarify with Mr. Milburn that if the grant is received and there's concerns in regards to traffic, access, egress, and does this mean if we receive the grant that this is a fait accompli?
Mr. Milburn, does this automatically make it so that the staff recommendation at a future decision would be to approve the project?
Your Worship, no, a grant application is just that. It's essentially a request to spend the dollars. As Mr. Stewart mentioned, we wouldn't apply for it unless we knew we could commit with funding. But at the end of the day, funding agreement would have to be signed, a partner would have to be found, and a lease agreement with that partner found as well. So there are multiple steps that would need to occur. And Council has demonstrated interest in the project, of course, keeping Council up to date on how that project is.
It's not really asking my question. So if Council determined, and if the neighborhood, the sports users, whoever came out and said that this was not the appropriate location, or they wanted local, a local drive for childcare in this area instead of sort of a regional. If Council decided that they did not want to go through ahead with this particular iteration or this recommendation, could Council vote against it?
The short answer, Your Worship, is yes.
Yep. Thank you very much,
Mr.
Stewart. That was the answer from Mr. Stewart.
It's just that the policy says that childcare can be anywhere. So if we couldn't, I don't understand. I still don't.
It's still Council's decision to decide whether to use to allow this to go ahead. It would be Council's decision to issue a building permit. on the project. So there's plenty of opportunity for council input. I believe that has been addressed by both Mr. Stewart and Mr. Milburn at this point. Mr. Stewart, do you have further comment?
I just want to be very clear that there are lots of steps, as we found out with affordable and social housing, that we have to go through to make sure the projects work in the community, that they work with the partners. And so this is merely a grant application. If we are successful in the grant application, we'll come back and we'll talk to council about the consultation that's necessary and whether it works. And council, I will remind you, has in other cases said, no, this doesn't work for us in terms of our criteria, our needs right now, and not approved partnerships. So we still have that opportunity here. We're just trying to get in to see if we can get some grant money.
Thank
My
you very
frustration-
much, Mr. Stewart.
My
Councillor Murray,
frustration.
you've already spoken full time on the matter. So at this point, I'm going to go to Councillor Forbes for her second time speaking. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just want to make it really clear that I'm for childcare. There seems to be a almost passive aggressive kind of attitude that if you start asking questions about something, then it implies you're against it. And so I want to make it really careful because I ask questions about the expense of this project. That doesn't mean I'm against childcare. So I just wanted to clarify that, and I'm well aware of all of the supporting policies that we have for childcare. I didn't really need them listed off. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Okay, I'll call the question on the motion. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion carries. Okay, thank you very much, Council. Next item up for discussion is item 8.4. This is amendments to election sign regulations. Councillor Back, this is your report. Do you have some opening comments and do you have a motion? I guess your motion would be to...
Sure, Your Worship. Yeah, I'll move the recommendation.
Is there a seconder for the recommendation? Councillor Bond. Okay, thank you. Councillor Back, your comments?
Thank you very much. And thank you, staff, for receiving this issue and coming back with this report. I first brought this issue forward, as you may recall, at the beginning of this year. And my hope is that we can potentially initiate some changes tonight that would introduce some regulations around election sign requirements here in the District of North Van, should council support them. I just want to make a couple of points because most of it is in the report and we have discussed this before, but it's about really the impact that these very large non-regulated signs, largely made of plastic and often prone to vandalism, have on our environment, as well as the negative visual impact that they have throughout our community come every election season. So that's one main point, I think, and it's also about creating a more level playing field for anyone who wants to put their name forward and run for public office here in the district. I regularly connect with younger members of our community, and I know for many of them the cost of large signs that, again, can be very large and very expensive would be prohibitive. So it's definitely not about my own campaign or my own interests. I've got large signs that I used in the last election and I could use them again if I wanted to. It's certainly not about taking away anyone's right to campaign freely, but I think it can be done with some regulation in place and with some consistency across the North Shore. So those are just my opening comments and I look forward to the discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bond. You seconded the matter. Do you have any further comments?
You know, I think we had a pretty lively discussion last time this was brought forward, and I do think it is time to have staff come back with a report based on what Councillor Back has recommended here, and aligning our regulations with that in the city does produce kind of a more consistent approach across at least our part of the North Shore, and so I'm going to be supporting this.
Thank you. So just my own comments on the matter. I'm not supportive of this. I think the flexibility of sign shapes and sizes and locations is very important, particularly for new people coming into the election space. You know, I think I shared the story last time that my budget was so small on my first campaign that, I ended up setting up some A-frame signs and moving them around to a bunch of different locations just to sort of try and get my value out of them because I couldn't afford a large campaign. But the problem is the alternatives are not cheaper, they're more expensive. When we limit the advertising in the public space, which I got to tell you, I have a full campaign. I think I spent about $2,500 in total on all of my advertising in the last campaign, with the exception of the letter that I sent forward. So $2,500. That included maintaining signs at about 20 different locations with large signs. If you go to small signs and newspaper advertising, your costs are going to be way higher. And so this has been the challenge that the city of North Vancouver had. And they have had challenges. They have had fights, particularly in the 2011 election. They had an awful fight because they were fighting over who had the right to take over those little bicycle signs along Lonsdale at the bicycle stops, and fights over who could pay for signs that were close to City Hall or on other public pieces of infrastructure, or whether it was fair to advertise on them. The other issue is the detritus, right? Like as you go down Keith Road, 3rd Street, there are hundreds of signs, hundreds and hundreds of signs out there. And when we talked about this last time, I showed the Google Street View picture of what 3rd Street Hill looked like in the city of North Vancouver. That's what that policy produces. Rather than having a few condensed, concise areas where people tend to all gather and put their signs up, you end up with just a litany of signs everywhere because the person goes and buys 250 small signs rather than 20 large signs. The cost is so much cheaper to maintain large sign infrastructure than it is to buy even the smallest counts of the small signs. But the other issue is that this tall format has been raised as a concern. We put our development variance permit signs throughout the community. They are a tall format, mostly a 4x8 tall sign. And the reason for that is you can communicate more information. One of my signs would have not only my name and my information, but I would always be able to dedicate a portion of my sign to advertise the date of the election. I would use up to about a quarter of the space of my sign. One year, I had all the advanced poll dates on it. I had all of the E-Day information on the sign because I had a large enough sign to do that. When you force the candidates to have a small sign, you get a color, a name, that's it, no other information. And I've used it to advertise websites, to advertise the dates of the elections, where people can vote or where they can find more information to vote. And it's one of the advantages of being more flexible in the signs. I get that people don't like the look of them, but to compare the cost of having to pay for a newspaper ad that sits on the shelf for 1 cycle or 2 cycles and then is gone, compared to my entire campaign's budget for all of my large signs, there's no contest. Large sign format is cheap, and it's easy for new candidates to come in and get their name known and show that they have a professional campaign. So that's it. That's all my comment is on this matter. I don't think that we should be interfering. We should be allowing new candidates to have as much flexibility as we had to become candidates. I don't think that it is fair for us to use our elected advantage, our incumbent advantage, to make it harder for other people to get elected. We've already got our names established in the community because we've already been through elections, and now we're going to say in a future election, sorry, the only way you can get your name known is on a teeny weeny little sign or a horrifically expensive newspaper ad. It's not fair. And I think that the 4x8 tall size sign that we use for our development variance permits throughout the community for public hearing signs is a very efficient way to convey a variety of information. And I think that if you're okay with it for developments in the community, in fact, we fight for more and more of those signs when there's a development because we want people to be aware of it. And here we are saying that we we think that that size is not a good way to communicate to the community. I just don't agree with it. I think that we have other priorities that deserve more attention from staff in the next year, and I will not be supportive of this. The next speaker that I have is Councillor Curran.
Thanks. I want to eliminate all signs everywhere. I don't think that they're necessary. I think the information that needs to be communicated to the public is that there's an election, and I think that that there should be public funding available so that it truly is a level playing field. But I understand that we're not debating that today. Unfortunately, I didn't get any love for that. So I think that having some regulations around it is a step, hopefully, towards that eventually. I think signs are expensive, and as I said before, they're pollution. I don't think that the public actually appreciates signs at all. But I think that making sure that everyone knows that there's an election and providing opportunities for everyone to be able to let people know who they are is really important. But I don't think it's fair to begin with. I think some people will have more access to money and therefore more signs. I wonder if staff could comment on limits to the amount of signs, because I agree the idea isn't that we want to now have hundreds of signs. I think the idea is to hopefully minimize the amount of signs over time. I do think that eventually the signs will be eliminated, because I think, you know, as a municipality and as many other municipalities have done, things are changing. We don't need to do things the way that we have in the past. Yeah, so I see this as a step towards something, but it's not as far as I'd like to see it go. Could staff just comment on the if they're aware of other places that have a limit to the amount of signs?
We have a staff person that can comment on this. I believe that this is a council report. I'm not seeing any members of staff putting their hand up to address the issue. Mr. Stewart?
Yeah, Your Worship. I think these kinds of recommendations are ones that we need to look at to provide more information to council if that's what they wish. But again, this is a councillor initiated report, and we'll take any direction that council provides. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, I know that it would be interesting to find out how it's gone in Surrey. I believe Surrey banned election signs, and also Brampton and another place in Ontario. So I think there are some municipalities moving in that direction, and it would be interesting to see how they were able to make sure that the idea that there was an election, because I think one of the benefits is that it's very clear that there's an election. But I just feel that there's other ways to do that are more equitable and more environmentally friendly and would actually be more popular in the community.
Okay. All right, thank you very much, Councillor. Next speaker is Councillor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you very much. And my area of concern here is more with respect to the location of the signs. And the motion, as I understand it, is to create alignment between the City of North Vancouver and the District of North Vancouver. And a part of that differentiation is small signs versus large signs. And I appreciate the different points of view on that. But there's also the issue of private and public property. And as I read the bylaw that was put forward, the City of North Vancouver is more restrictive, significantly more restrictive with respect to, and perhaps I'm misreading it, but it seems to me that the placing of election signs on public property is more restricted within the city bylaw. I just ran a federal election where I was in two jurisdictions. One had a complete ban, and Mayor Little, you will know the experience that I'm talking about, a complete ban on placement of signs on public property, and the other allowed placement of signs on public property. And in terms of creating equity and a level playing field, access to the electoral process, I'm not convinced that the restrictions of signs on public property is in the right direction, because it actually, from my point of view, was perhaps more favoring to the incumbent to have the limitation with respect to public property. So I'm not saying for all time and all places and all purposes, I'm not interested in electoral sign reform. I do have an interest in regulating electoral signs, and I also would support measures perhaps to reduce signs overall. But I'm not convinced that simply adopting the City of North Vancouver's bylaws and incorporating them into the district, as I understand those bylaws in the City of North Vancouver, is actually going to serve the social good that is being sought. So I don't think I'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Hanson. Next speaker is Councillor Murray.
Well, I've spent the least amount of money of any councillor that's been successful in 26 years or 25 years. I printed 8 4x8 sheets, and I actually started the big sign movement, so you can blame me. And I did it for the exact reason that we're talking about tonight. It was affordable. I've never spent really, other than the last term, I never take out newspaper ads. I generally, the amount of money I spend on an election is about $1,200, and that's been consistent for 7 terms. In fact, this year I had to say goodbye to one of my original signs because there was just too much duct tape, and they were falling apart. And but they lasted that long, and it was and I hated all those little signs. I didn't understand why anybody had to put like 8 signs that looked the same 4 feet apart from one another down the side of a road. Like that's not how we ran guard. We had big signs, and we, those big signs and the font, I'm still fighting with, Mayor Little, I'm sorry, you say that, big signs communicate. Well, yeah, I'll show you some signs that don't communicate at all. But those big signs garnered 15,000 people to sign a petition in 6 weeks. That's how effective they were. And so why do you want to reinvent the wheel? So we did the same thing when we ran in the election. We used the big signs, and we're still using the same signs. Only in the last election did I purchase some additional signage in those small ones. And, I will use those again. So the idea that big signs are expensive, I would absolutely categorically suggest that that's not correct at all, unless those people that are buying them are using some sort of material that is, beyond what the mayor and I have used on those large signs, because they're not more expensive than those little signs. Those little signs, you need wire cages, and they rip and they fall. Like those big signs are bolted into the ground. You can't move them. And I've only ever had one vandalized. And I actually went and got it back. So I think it is and there's less, it's a way to lessen the amount of small signage throughout the neighborhood, because you just put them in 8 key areas, and everybody drives by those areas within that 4-week time limit while we're running for election. The other thing is the feds in the province are never going to they're never going to let their big signs go away. They're always going to allow them, no matter what we do. So we're hurting ourselves by not being able to communicate with the community. And mine had, slogans on them. But the feds in the province, they're going to keep putting as many big signs up as they want. They don't follow our bylaws. They can put their signs wherever they want. I can't put mine on the highway. I can't put mine on the medians. I only have certain places where I can put mine. Mine are put up within that 4-week period, and they are taken down the next day. And if any of them get lost, I go and search them for them, and I count them. I know how many I have, And I still can see from the last election signs in my neighborhood that are lying in the bush, that are on the side of people's houses, that are in the backyards of people. Like, so I just, I don't know. I think the difference with the city is that their land, they're different from us. We have a lot more area. We have big medians that you can place the signs on. So I don't know. I've never spent so much money than in the last election, and I did it to support Councillor Forbes and Councillor Curran. I did it to support Zoanne Morton and Councillor Hanson. I won't spend that money again. It was horribly expensive, those ads. And the North Shore News, I never see the North Shore News. I haven't had a North Shore News on my porch for a few years. So a lot of people don't even get the paper, and you pay for those expensive ads, and you can't rely on social media. So the big signs are a good way to communicate and let people know who's running, and then they can go onto our own websites and find out more about us and make a decision from there. But it's something that's not broken. Yeah, I don't like looking at the signs either, but it's for 4 weeks. It's not forever.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Forbes.
I think a lot of what I was going to say has been said, but a couple things. When this came up the last time around, my complaint about the signs was the off-ramps or on-ramps where you have the same person putting 8 signs, one after another. And also, perhaps we should have designated sort of boulevards or locations when it's on public property to cut down that clutter. And I just don't see the rationale of putting 8 of your signs in one spot. So it was more the number of signs that I didn't agree with, not necessarily the size or anything else. It's only up, as Councillor Murray said, they're only up for 30 days, but so I don't think it's a big infringement. The other thing is, a lot of people in the city don't know, and the district goes both ways, don't know where they live, and we end up with city signs on district property. And so that makes some of it, and it may happen the other way for the city, I don't know, but that also needs to be kind of looked at, I think. But I think when I was running for the first time in the last election, and I put a sign in where it shouldn't have been, I got a really nice, polite, and I mean it sincerely, a polite phone call that my sign shouldn't be there, and then I needed to go and remove it because that wasn't a proper place to put it. So if we could have the same kind of regulation around not putting half a dozen of your signs within 3 feet of each other, that would be more what I would be looking for. I think that everybody else has covered everything, except that I would also say that I don't know if it's me. I don't think it's just me, but I think that we're getting told more and more what we can and we can't do. And I'm not saying, I just don't think limiting how people express themselves, whether it's a large sign, small sign, the creativity that may go into that so that they're identified. I believe Councillor Curran made her signs circular and out of wood on the last election, but that creativity, that artistic ability to do what you want with your sign, I think should be allowed. And I don't think we should tell you you can only do this. So yeah, I'm not in favor of this motion the way it's written. If we in the future limit the number of signs or locations, I'd be in favor of that, looking at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Second time speaker, Councillor Curran.
Thank you, Mayor Little. It seems like the majority does support looking at policies to change signs. It may not be that this is the city of North Vancouver is exactly the right mix yet. So could I propose an amendment to the motion on the floor?
You can propose an amendment. I'll have to determine whether it is a material change to the motion or whether it's something that we can on the fly.
The intent was to communicate with the city of North Vancouver to see if they were also open to some of these changes that have been discussed around, because I think ultimately it does make sense to work as much across the North Shore as we can. And they may also be open to specifically location and or quantity. So just that staff would ask North Vancouver, because right now as it's written, it's that we would adopt, that would align the District of North Vancouver's election sign regulations with the City of North Vancouver. So I would just suggest the amendment be that that district staff speak to that district staff reach out to the city staff to discuss sign regulations and report back to council with suggestions based on after that conversation, because I think it would just be nice to have a conversation with them first.
Okay, so
I'm not sure, unless they already
have.
have talked to the city, and unless there's no willingness, in which case I think we should. Does that make sense?
I'm just going to confer with the clerk on the matter. Hang on just a moment. So my view is that it actually does collide somewhat with the current motion, because the current motion prescribes a route that we would take on the City of North Vancouver's style, or at least that staff would recommend would come and report back on that. And what you've proposed is that instead we just refer to a discussion group with the City of North Vancouver to look at more broadly other matters. And so the two would have a conflict of some point, because one of them prescribes what you're going to do and the other one says, let's go back to the drawing board and let's have a different discussion. Mr. Stewart, you have your hand up. Do you have a comment on that?
Yeah, just a very brief one, Your Worship. The motion presumes that in fact there's a desire for alignment, and I think council needs to make that decision before necessarily voting on this. I mean, the assumption is that we want to align, and if council doesn't want to align and they want us to explore other alternatives, we can certainly do that. We don't need a motion to do that, but I think the motion in front of council is a matter of alignment, and council needs to decide on that.
So I'm going to rule the motion out of order and say that we vote on the motion that's on the floor, and if it's
The
not
amendment
successful,
out of order. The amendment out of order.
I'm calling the amendment out of order, and if the matter is the matter on the floor is not supported, then there's an opportunity to have that broader discussion if you so wish. But at this point, I'd say the two are in conflict. One prescribes a route and the other one says, let's go back to the drawing board and talk more broadly. And I'd find those two to be in conflict. So I'm going to say that is out of order. Okay, so the main motion is on the floor, which is has been moved and seconded. Is there any other discussion on the main motion? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Contrary minded? Motion is defeated with Mayor Little, Councillor Forbes, Councillor Murray, and Councillor Hanson opposed. Okay. Thank you very much, Council. Moving on to item 8.5. This is the draft Metro 2050 plan. Proposed comments on the updated regional growth strategy. And at this point, we have Josh Cairns joining the meeting. Well, we have a speaker actually from the public first. And so Mr. Teven expressed an interest to speak to the matter. Mr. Teven is here in person. There we go. Mr. Teven, welcome. You
Thank
have
you,
30 minutes
Your
to
Worship.
address the council.
For the read into the record, my residence is 1900 block Indian River Crescent. Good evening, Your Worship and Council. I'd like to address some aspects, certainly not the whole thing, of the Metro 2050 draft regional growth strategy that is the topic in your agenda here. I have to confess that I'm naive about the delegation of powers between Metro's member municipalities and Metro, the regional district. I confess I do not understand where their mandate and where their legislative authority derive from. You see, I thought that the authority was held by democratically elected officials. In short, I thought you have that authority. But in reading the Metro 2050 document, it seems well clear that Metro intends to dictate to municipalities what, where, and how much development will be undertaken. And given the proclivity that the province has recently espoused, with similar rhetoric from at least one, if not a majority of this council, that the province should dictate to municipalities and that decisions should be made by staff and not council, it makes me wonder, what do we need a local council for at all? In order to undertake that, the province would have to rewrite the Community Charter and the Local Government Act, and I think one other piece of legislation to do that. If this is the direction that we're going, wouldn't it be more efficient to completely abolish municipal councils altogether and simply have an official community plan conflab every 5 years where consultants make a show of mimicking public input and then they hand down the OCP that then gets administered by staff? Some could argue we have that now. All I can say is this: any of you that vote to endorse this plan, you may as well leave your seat now, because what use will you be when there are no decisions left to be made? You know, thinking back to the public meeting on September 21st, I'm sure you remember the one that was announced on an internal memo on September 1st, but wasn't communicated to the public until the 17th, where the Metro officials intimated that the Metro sewage treatment plant project was proceeding well, only to have the entire train come off the rails. I wrote here within a mere week, but it could have been hours. One might question Metro's sincerity and faithfulness. Maybe you have more faith in them. If it were me, I would not endorse this strategy. And I want to remind you, all of you, most of you, ran on a mandate to fix transportation and better manage the pace of development. And this plan gives up half of that. We'll get to transportation when that comes. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Teven. Okay, at this point, I'm going to refer the matter to staff. Mr. Cairns, you have some opening remarks.
Yep, thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, and to members of council. So tonight, staff are requesting council's endorsement of the comments on the draft regional growth strategy, Metro 2050, and that staff be directed to submit the comments to Metro Vancouver. Metro Vancouver began the process of updating the regional growth strategy in 2019, and over the following 2 years engaged with member jurisdictions, including the district, stakeholders, experts, and the public. District staff provided comments earlier this year on draft policy changes through an intergovernmental advisory committee. The full draft Metro 2050 was released in June 2021 and presented to the district at the public meeting on September 21st, 2021. Much of the content from the current regional growth strategy, Metro 2040, remains unchanged. For example, Metro 2050 focuses on the same 5 key goals: a compact urban area, supporting a sustainable economy, protecting the environment, providing diverse and affordable housing, and supporting sustainable transportation choices. Staff generally support the goals and key directions in Metro 2050. However, staff also have several outstanding concerns and have provided recommended comments for council's consideration. These comments emphasize that Metro 2050 must reflect and respect matters within municipal jurisdiction. This will ensure municipalities can continue to consider their unique needs and determine what tools and approaches are most appropriate. In summary, staff are requesting council's endorsement of the comments on the draft regional growth strategy, Metro 2050, and pending council direction are prepared to submit the comments to Metro Vancouver. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cairns. Just my own comments on it. Just want to be clear about what council is considering tonight, because I think Mr. Teven's comments, I agree with a lot of the concerns that he's expressed, but what Mr. Teven's comments were focused on were not the staff comments on the plan, which in many cases highlight exactly what Mr. Teven is talking about. As an example, there's comments about the scope of the regional growth strategy and talking about how these areas are areas that the district already has policies that would now be in conflict with the regional government. And we already have plans that meet or exceed the requirements that that Metro is putting forward. One of the examples, unfortunately, Ms. Bond was here for most of the meeting, but Kelly Bond has been a tireless advocate for, is on affordable housing percentages. And this council has actually achieved a significantly higher percentage of affordable housing in the units that we've approved in this council's term. And so we would end up in a situation where we were sort of in conflict with what is being proposed at the regional government. But what we're considering today is the staff comments on the plan. It's not on the plan as a whole. It's basically positioning ourselves to announce that we have concerns about these areas in the plan. And reading through the proposals from staff, I'd say they generally align with my major concerns for the plan. And so I'm left in a situation where I tend to be supportive of the staff comment. But I have this overarching concern, which is that the Metro Vancouver was told by the provincial government, you have to have a regional plan, but they really didn't define what it had to cover. And Metro Vancouver was traditionally a utilities service body. They provide water, they provide sanitary sewer, they provide zero waste pickup and recycling services. They're largely combining our utility needs in the district of North Vancouver. But this goes well beyond that. This goes into areas of concurrent jurisdiction with the local government and trying to define how we develop in our own community, which should be a local discussion. It shouldn't necessarily be something that is prescribed by the regional district. I understand why they would want to, because when you're trying to plan sanitation and waste and water services, it is so much easier to be the one that dictates how that development is going to take place. But we have a system here that the local government, local priorities are set at the local election. They're not set at the regional district. And this would, in some ways, put us in conflict with our own policies that we've set forward in the community. So I'm not supportive of the draft Metro 2050 plan, but I'm in the awkward position in that I actually agree with the staff comments and critiques of the plan. And so I'm going to be supporting the motion that's on the floor today while maintaining criticism of the Metro 2050 plan going forward and what I see as being its scope creep into areas of concurrent jurisdiction with the municipality. So I will be supportive of the staff recommendation in this matter. Did I ask for a seconder or did I miss that part? Is there a seconder on the matter? Apologies. Council, is there a seconder? Your hand is up, Councillor Hanson. Are you seconding? Okay, is there a seconder on the matter?
Yes, I'll second.
Councillor Murray is going second for discussion from Councillor Murray. Thank you very much. Councillor Murray, do you have additional comments?
Could I just pass at the moment and come back?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. But I only have one other speaker signed up at this moment. Councillor Hanson, your comments?
Yes, thank you very much. I support comment number 3 with respect to the inclusion of the Maplewood area into the major transit network and the major growth corridor. The likely growth in Maplewood, especially in view of the Tsleil-Waututh addition to reserve and with the Maplewood Northlands and resulting development, clearly, in my view, requires that Maplewood be included as a major growth corridor and a major transit center. So I support that entirely. I also support the comment with respect to the comment number 6, with respect to financial implications and the discussion of growth paying for growth. I also broadly share the concerns about the Metro's jurisdiction with respect to the limits of their jurisdiction and where it is that they assert to have a role. And I very much support and will stand by the role of local government in zoning, and that it is our responsibility and as elected officials, as was brought forward by Mr. Teven, with that direct relationship to the voter and to our community to deal with the issue of zoning. However, from my point of view, comments number 1, 2, 4, and 5 are, from my perspective, somewhat of a mischaracterization of the Metro 2050 plan. Metro 2050 is a high-level aspirational document that seeks to collaboratively align the various local governments and one treaty First Nation within Metro to similar philosophies with respect to the management of growth and development. And those philosophies are very broadly stated as, first of all, concentrating growth in complete transit-friendly communities. Secondly, protecting industrial and agricultural lands. Thirdly, protecting green space. 4, creating diverse and affordable housing. And 5th, supporting sustainable transportation. The document is not regulatory. It does not mandate us to comply with its provisions. No more than any other local government must comply with its provisions. As was stated by Mr. Teven in public input and Mayor Little in his remarks, Metro does not have zoning authority. Where the Metro 2050 plan clashes with the will of local councils, it will simply be ineffective. And we maintain jurisdiction over land use and zoning, and I don't see anything in Metro 2050 that actually sets that aside, although one can understand why one would be perhaps suspicious of a Metro's assertion, perhaps, of a kind of authority over zoning. In my view, though, when I carefully read the language of Metro 2050 that was being commented on, and I don't feel that those comments are necessarily required. And I have a concern that in putting the comments forward that will be viewed as not supporting the key premises of the Metro 2050 plan, which in my view would be a mischaracterization, because in my view, the Metro 2050 plan in its broad strokes is very similar to the philosophy of our official community plan. And I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Hanson. Councillor Murray, are you prepared to make comments?
Yes, Mayor Little, thank you. I'm just sorry. I don't disagree with your comments, and I don't disagree with Councillor Hanson's comments. You know, I think it's about finding a balance, and certainly the previous plan was called the livable region, and this plan is called the regional growth. I specifically concur with Councillor Hanson's reflection in regards to growth paying for growth, because we know that it's actually not paying for growth. And, you know, one can just look at the Metro Vancouver budget and the infrastructure projects that are coming forward in the future and, you know, sort of shudder at the costs that are coming in regards to the growth into the region. You know, the ideas of the regional growth strategy are laudable, and certainly concentration of growth, a public transportation system that's effective, efficient, affordable housing. And to date, it's very challenging to find any of those things. So I'm going to listen to the rest of council on this, but I'm going to come back with some additional comments in a moment. Thank you.
Would any other member of council like to speak? Councillor Curran.
Thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to echo some of the concerns around, specifically, I think around the affordable housing. You know, we're facing interconnected, unprecedented crises, and we need more than ever to work across the region, I think, in a new way. I'm not saying I know exactly what that is, but I think that, you know, this comes down to power, and I don't think that we have achieved if I look at previous plans, and it's not I misunderstood in the beginning of the term as well, like the word growth. I think it's that there is this much growth coming from all of these reasons already. It's not about growing. It's about how do we best create a hopefully livable region for folks, especially in a rapidly changing climate and other conditions. So I am concerned that the language should be around, and I think Kelly Bond brought this up, but like a minimum of 15%. Like, I think having those targets in is important, and so that we're not limited to 15%. I think the idea is to work in new ways across municipalities. And so I appreciate some of the concerns around municipalities making decisions, but I also think we have to find new ways to do this. So I would, sorry, I just had a couple points that I wanted to make sure I touched on. I think that there oh, my internet is unstable. Sorry, I lost my power earlier. Could staff just speak specifically to that language? I am saying that we don't support the 15%, which is not a municipal. It's not a municipal target. It's a regional target, and I do think a target around that is important and achieving that. And I have some other comments, but maybe staff could speak around that language. And if we could amend that to how we're going to do this. Is it going to be all or nothing? It sounds like certain councillors have concerns with some specific language.
Okay, Mr. Stewart, your response?
Your worship, if council has more concerns than those expressed by staff, you may want to take the position, and this is going to be very controversial, but I'm going to say it anyway. You may want to pass a motion to say you don't support the 2050 plan as it's proposed, and request that staff engage further with Metro to discuss the concerns expressed by council. Now, I know that that's going to be, like as I say, very controversial, but I don't know how we get their attention otherwise if we just restrict our comments to a few small anomalies, because what I'm hearing is that there's a fundamental issue of needing more information, more time, more opportunity to understand what this means for us, because there's no question there's scope creep that's happening at Metro. And maybe we need to send that message. And I'm sorry, I'm being very political here, and I apologize. I will back out of those political conversations. I'm throwing my hat in the ring there a little bit.
You're a resident in the region as well, Mr. Stewart. That's okay. Councillor Curran, were you complete with your comments?
Yeah, I guess just a question. We often hear controversy or questions surrounding growth paying for growth, and then I would say no growth not paying for no growth. So could staff speak to how they see the future? Because there have been concerns that I've heard expressed by staff and council and community about the idea of that. Like, what is the future of truly regenerative community building? And because there are valid concerns around projects that have big projects that have not gone according to plan, and this is a daunting task to to figure out how we're going to create, truly livable communities that achieve all of our other values that we've put forward in terms of equity and reconciliation and responding to the climate emergency. So are there any specific things that staff is doing with finance, et cetera, to see like what is a more sustainable way of managing the changes that are coming? Because it seems like whatever we're doing now doesn't work.
Mr. Stewart.
Your worship, there are discussions that are occurring at staff levels, at all levels, around some of these very important issues. And I think, again, in my opinion, we're at a bit of a point with Metro where either the municipalities in the region are deciding what their futures are in collaboration with Metro, or Metro's deciding what our futures are, period. And so I go back to my earlier comment. If there are a lot of concerns about where this is going, then we need not to support it at this particular point. Merely register that with Metro, and then we can start some discussions. And we're not alone in this. I would suggest that there are many municipalities that have real concerns about the role of Metro versus the role of local government, whose authority, what the scope of services are. And I think this is the perfect time to say, hold it a minute, let's have a conversation about that, because I don't sense that Metro as a board is as sensitive to these issues as they need to be.
Thank you, Mr. Stewart. Next speaker I have, first-time speaker, Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to make an amending motion that we respond with saying we don't support the Metro 2050 as presented, but would refer it back for more consultation and more discussion.
Okay, just going to confer with the clerk on that, because we do have a motion on the floor. Yeah, so it is directly contrary to the motion that's on the floor, and so the proper order would be to defeat the motion that's on the floor and replace it with a motion as you've suggested, Councillor Forbes. So I'm going to carry on with this motion, and if we can't reach a consensus with the council on this motion, then we'll be looking for an alternative, which I think aligns with both your comments and I believe Mr. Stewart's comments as well.
Okay, then okay, a couple things. I went to the Metro Council of Councils, I don't know, a week ago, I forget. But in any case, what they presented was how many must-do capital projects they have on the books right now, which is 200. And they also presented us with the facts that they collect for our water and our sewer, and it doesn't include school taxes, doesn't include property taxes, what they collect. That's on top of what they collect. And they predict that their fees for what they do in the water and the sewer area are going to go from roughly $547 a year per household to double, almost $1,000 in the next 5 years just for their fees. Never mind your property or anything else. So to me, the combination of having 200 capital projects that are must-dos and the fact that they want to double their fees, which they never go down, they always go up, but to double in 5 years speaks to me of project mismanagement, cost mismanagement. And so I'm really concerned about how they're creeping into wanting to control more and more of the areas that the municipality, the DND, actually has control over. It almost feels like TransLink and Metro have become big brothers, and they're going to tell us what we can do in our own area. And I'm concerned about that centralized authority that they're trying, it seems like they're trying to create, because who knows best for your own location. The DNB is a very unique location. You know, we have mountains on the north and we have oceans on the south and harbor on the south, and on the east or west, we have the ocean. So we're pretty restricted in, much like our transportation system, we have 2 bridges to get off of the North Shore. So we have very unique needs here in the district. And if you centralize this authority and some of the things that they're starting to creep into, you're not going to get that uniqueness, individual decisions that really respond to at the individual level. You're going to get a larger type of thing that will sort of fit for everybody, and who it doesn't fit for, well, that's too bad. I think this 2050 document overreaches too far, way too far. And we've paid into Metro and we've paid into TransLink hundreds of thousands of dollars over the years. And what have we gotten for it? Is TransLink, have we gotten much from TransLink? We got a C-bus that was given and taken away, and now we have the rapid or the B-line down on the lower end that we just recently got. And what has Metro really given us? We're giving the water off the North Shore, you know, we do, and then we get the sewage plant, which is a big thing that I was really happy it was going to be tertiary, and now it's over budget, over time, and we don't know where that's going to go. So how do you trust in a body that has shown it hasn't responsibly taken care of our tax dollars or responsibly done project management on a capital project? And if they say they have 200 capital projects that are must-dos, that makes me so scared for what that means as far as cost to the taxpayer. And again, like I say, you still have your property and school taxes on top of that. So I just think that this isn't an aspirational document. I think this lays the foundation for that creep that's going to come in. And if we don't say no, stop, talk to us more, and listen more to us, then I'm afraid that some of our powers, much like we said 2 weeks ago with the housing needs report, be careful what you say because you may be held to it at some point. With this one, I want to be really careful and not say yes to this in the form it's in right now.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Mayor Little. So I think Councillor Forbes does bring up some interesting points as well. I think all the points that have been made are very valid. The issue of housing affordability came up in discussions through the planning committee in which I sit on and the board. And the question was asked, why not 20%? Why is it 15%? And, you know, when it's a regional target, it's easy to put that percentage in, 15, 20. All municipalities are going to handle that differently because we're all very different. You know, I think the other thing, and this is what's, you know, the FCM and the UBCM have done is, you know, split the big cities and the little cities, the little towns and the big cities, because they're all so different. In Metro Vancouver, you know, it's the same, you can apply the same theory. Those of us that are small, and you know, you can look at communities like Belcarra and Anmore. They're very small. You know, their municipal hall is a trailer. You know, they don't have the budgets that some of us have. So, you know, the issues of the cost, the cumulative totals coming at the region and coming at the taxpayers. I think Mr. Stewart raises some very good points in regards to, you know, there are some concerns. Metro started off basically looking after utility, and now it's a separate level of government. In saying that, I will tell you that I believe Metro does a lot of things very well. They've got an exceptional park system that supported this region with all of us supporting with our certainly our parks, you know, the ability for people to get out and recreate. They have a consistent message. Their communications is a consistent level of communication. Their their messaging out to the community is very consistent. They do that well. They're smaller projects, and I think Mr. Joyce, if he was on this call, I'm not sure if he is on this call anymore. He wasn't, unless he's come back, but he will tell you that Metro does a very good job at small projects, utility projects, or small infrastructure projects, capital projects. They've certainly been in the affordable housing game for many, many years, and obviously water, sewer. Those some of the big replacement projects are daunting, and the challenges that we've had with our own sewage treatment plant over here. Sorry.
You're over your 6 minutes.
I know it's a big issue, and I think we need to be able to. So I'm just maybe, Mayor Little, maybe we need to sort of understand this is supposed to be going back by the end of November. Then it will, I think Metro's goal is to try to have Metro 2050 wrapped up in the new year. I know that there has been concern from different municipalities around the region, as well as you've stated, and as Mr. Stewart has stated. It's better to get this right and deal with all of the concerns from the municipality rather than pushing it forward for a date because they want to get to the end in regards to this process. I will tell you that there's also, a concern in regards to, the challenges, and I think you talked about this at the beginning in regards to contradictions, Mayor Little. Very disappointingly, last Friday, the Metro Board voted in favor of removing 600 acres out of the urban containment boundary to accommodate mixed-use commercial in a former piece of ALR land, green zone, and forest in Campbell Heights in Surrey. Metro Vancouver has worked very hard to support UNDRIP and reconciliation, and sadly, there was no communication or consultation with the Semiahmoo First Nation. So
I have to ask you to draw to a close because you're way over the time.
I will. So I guess what I'm saying is that if we're going to make these policy statements within this plan, then we need to stand by those policy statements and support them. And you can't have it both ways.
Yeah, and thank you very much for your comments, Councillor. And I do appreciate the work that you're doing on the main board of Metro Vancouver. It must be a frustrating time to balance the regional interest, and I do appreciate you doing that work. I wanted to just make my own additional comments here. A couple of things have come up. The issue of growth pays for growth has been restated, and perhaps it's a bit of a misnomer. What we're talking about here is whether property taxes should pay for growth. And overwhelmingly, the new units that are produced are purchased by people who already live here. And they're purchasing it from the sale of another property that they've already sold. So the question isn't really about growth necessarily paying for growth. It's just whether property taxes should be the source of paying for the growth in the region. Whereas somebody selling a multi-million-dollar house and moving down to an apartment, should it be the uplift on their multi-million-dollar house that is paying for the growth? And I think most people around this table would say that's a little bit more fair than having the current existing property taxes cover the bill, which is very difficult to collect, versus somebody who is cashing out of a property, it's much easier to collect it. So the growth pays for growth is more related to whether property taxes is the source of tax to pay for the necessary growth in the region. Overwhelmingly, it's locals buying those new units, and the number of foreign transactions in the real estate market is still relatively small, although it is the catalyst for several other local transactions that take place. And so I wanted to mention that. The other thing that I have a challenge with, and I know I'm down to 40 seconds here, I rant too much, sprawl. Metro Vancouver has not addressed the issue of sprawl. They still incentivize development in areas that are not close to transportation, not close to major employment areas, and we can't seem to have that discussion in the region. And I get that this crosses over to TransLink somewhat, but TransLink is now with the Surrey Light Rail SkyTrain station is going to have a 50-kilometer long transit system to draw people downtown for work. We're 10 kilometers away and don't have the same level of service that they have. We're so much closer to the most major employment areas in the region, and yet we can't get the support of the region to advance our priorities. We also, when we're talking about sewage and wastewater treatment, I mean, as was mentioned, I think it was Councillor Forbes mentioned, we host many of the major pieces of infrastructure in the region here on the North Shore. We don't get tax revenue for it. Does it impact our local livability? Of course it does. Sometimes in a positive way through the regional parks that we have, but also sometimes in a negative way. We've had a very tragic death on the Capilano River right in our community, a father and son, because of a Metro Vancouver incident, because we're hosting that infrastructure here in our community, which we get very little benefit directly locally from. And also when it comes to the fee structures, the way we contribute is not fair. The cost for them to provide drinking water to the North Shore is way cheaper than the cost to provide drinking water out into the valley, where they have to do several uplift stations and several pump stations, and it's extremely complex. The sprawl out there is getting subsidized by us here because of the rate structure, where we're paying a bulk rate for water rather than the actual cost to deliver water to our community. That's not fair. And so I have a lot of frustrations with Metro Vancouver and its structure and how it manages its fees. And I don't think the North Shore gets treated fairly in the process. Councillor Curran.
Yeah, I guess just a question about process, because Metro Vancouver is representing the municipalities and Tsawwassen First Nation. And we have discussed previously the challenge that other Indigenous communities are not included because they're not treaties. So I think that's a problem. But I guess just in terms of process, when I read this document, to me, it lacks vision. It lacks, it's not what I would like to see when, to your point about sprawl, et cetera. But that's not, I just want to understand a little bit more about the process in which that comes to be. I'm assuming that the board, so it's one representative from each municipality, sort of drives the direction for that process. Because if the district was doing our official community plan, it would be led by council. So I guess that table is probably, there's a lot of tension there, I'm sensing. I think that's kind of, there is tension between municipalities who feel like they're pulling their weight and other municipalities that are seen to not be pulling their weight in terms of working across the region. So I think that it would be helpful for me to understand a bit about the process for how you get to this place where there is this document that that it is led by the electeds that sit there, or is it more staff-led? And then the other thing, just reflecting on for me, the people who should be driving this policy are the young folks who are going to experience this world for the longest amount of time. And I'm wondering what the engagement is with young folks on this during this process, because this is a big deal and I'm not really sure how we get to this place.
So this is where I'm going to have to narrow our comments back to what we're considering tonight, which is staff's comments on the report, the creation of the report. We don't have a member from Metro Vancouver here to speak to those matters, but Mr. Stewart perhaps can talk to the regional tension and the decision-making that occurs at the board.
Yeah, Your Worship, there's a lot of regional tension right now and a lot of competing interests. And I think a lot of the members of Metro are struggling with that. There is no question, for a variety of reasons, that growth is not playing for growth. They don't have the DCC structure in place to make sure that that's going to happen. And then we have a disparate reliance on assessment values, which of course don't serve us as well. With respect to the treaty and the Indigenous representation, I know there are some moves afoot with the staff to try to address that. The question is going to be, though, the last draft that I saw suggested, in fact, that we should add members to committees of the First Nations in the Lower Mainland, which kind of flies in the face of what we're struggling with right now as a municipality, because we don't seem to have a voice in some of these. So I just go back to the motion I made earlier on, and Councillor Forbes' sort of subsequent attempt at that is, if we have concerns about this, that's okay. That's okay. We don't have to just rubber stamp it. We can say council does not support the plan as proposed and requested staff engage with Metro staff to address and discuss the concerns raised by council. That's fair. That's fair. We get to do that as a municipality. And we can or we can't resolve these particular issues, but I think we really need to raise them, because in my personal opinion, they're shared by a lot of the smaller, medium municipalities in the region that feel that Metro is now being is subsuming not only the region, but that there are interests which really reflect the larger municipalities' interests as opposed to the smaller and the medium sized. And so that's why I would just suggest that rather than trying to create a solution, that we just pass a motion saying, you know what, we don't support this as proposed. We've got some concerns. We want to talk to you about it. And believe me, the process at Metro is to take all this input in, try to negotiate some solutions, and then come back to the board at some point. I would be very surprised if the 2050 plan gets advanced in this term. But anyway, I provided my wording on the motion. I think it sends a message to Metro that we have some concerns, and I think that's fair and legitimate for us to do that.
So I think that Mr. Stewart has provided wording. I'd like to go to Councillor Bond. I'd like to finish this, the comments, and then I'm going to put what Mr. Stewart has as an amendment in a way that doesn't conflict with it, because I think we can support our staff's current criticism of the matter and still take the position that we have concerns about the final document as well. And I think that the way Mr. Stewart has framed it here, we can get that up on the screen at that time. But I'm going to go to Councillor Bond for your comments on the main motion.
Thanks, Marilyn. And I think I share a lot of the comments and opinion of Councillor Hanson in his comments that he made earlier. I don't see in the Metro Vancouver 2050 plan, as Councillor Hanson outlined, there's 5 main goals. Each goal has a strategy. There's a bunch of different actions under each strategy. And of the hundreds of different actions that are listed in the Metro Vancouver plan, our staff, who have probably spent a lot more time analyzing this and working on it over the past 2 years, have identified a very small handful of specific actions under those strategies that are mostly wordsmithing issues. So instead of Metro setting a hard target of regional for new regional housing at 15%, our staff are suggesting a change that should be a little bit more of a softer wording instead of a hard target. And most of the comments in the document here, on a 100-page document, there's a very short summary of our staff comments, which would lead me to believe that our staff have reviewed in detail Metro 2050 plan. It generally aligns with both our OCP, the work that we're already doing, the policies that we already have. And so I'm not sure there's any reason, unless there's information that's not included in the report about the Metro 2050 plan that staff have other concerns about. But I don't see the reason for this sense of fear and hype that Big Brother is going to come in and take over our local decisioning making powers. So I don't see that. There's no evidence to me, at least in the report and the information from staff or in the Metro 2050 report, that that's an overwhelming concern. So I'm very comfortable supporting this recommendation for these specific comments, which mostly seem like a bit of a wordsmithing exercise. Our colleagues have mentioned other issues that we have with Metro. Those issues aren't related to the Metro 2050 plan. They're more related about project management around major infrastructure projects, consultation about those types of things. But those are separate issues, and I don't know how saying no to the Metro 2050 plan is an effective way to address those issues, which aren't really related to the plan. They're related to other ongoing operational and capital project decisions and management that Metro Vancouver does. So agree pretty much with Councillor Hanson, and I think that of the 100+ page plan, our staff have found a few items that require some discussion, and I agree with those.
Just want to be clear, Councillor Bond. Councillor Hanson has said that he's against the staff recommendation. It sounded like you were in favor of it, but I just want to be clear.
Yeah, Councillor Hanson had some specific items that he was for and the ones that he was against. I think we're on the same wavelength. I'm okay with our staff suggesting there being some wordsmithing to some of the detailed points in the plan. So I'd be okay with the comments as presented. I don't think saying no to the plan is sending a message in terms of getting other issues that we have addressed, which don't seem very specific to me at this point. So,
okay. Well, I'm going to call the question on the first matter, and then I will have a follow-up motion, which is in line with both what Councillor Forbes had said and Mr. Stewart had recommended. And so I'm going to call a question on the main motion, which is that we are endorsing the staff comments be sent to Metro Vancouver. So on that question, all those in favor? Contrary minded? Okay, I have Councillors Forbes, Curran, Murray, and Hanson opposed to sending our staff comments on to Metro Vancouver. Okay, so then the follow-up motion, which was, I'm going to ask Councillor Forbes if this matches your intended motion, which is that Council does not support the current draft Metro 2050 regional growth strategy, and that staff are directed to engage with Metro Vancouver staff regarding Council's concerns. Does that reflect what you wanted to make as a motion, Councillor Forbes? Okay, is there a seconder?
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder on that motion? Okay, I'll second that motion. Okay, Councillor Murray is seconding the motion. Okay. Is there further discussion on that motion? Councillor Bond?
Can we just have a list of what the concerns are? Because the concerns that I've heard, at least tonight in this discussion, don't really have to do with the Metro 2050 plan. They have to do with other things. So what concerns are we expressing to Metro Vancouver, or what are Council's concerns that we are planning to express about the Metro 2050 plan?
Mr. Stewart, you want to clarify that?
Yeah, Your Worship, at this point, we don't need to get into nitpicking about what some of the concerns that councillors have. I think we just need to send a message that we need some more dialogue about that. And I'm sure that that's going to be pretty consistent across the region. And, there will be a long discussion process across the region. I remember from previous years to discuss all of the different concerns, and they're going to be very different from North Van District, the City of North Vancouver, West Vancouver, Delta, blah, 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 blah. I think we're just suggesting here that, there are some concerns that have been raised, not only in the staff report, but others have been expressed by Council. And we want to see, as part of an overall regional discussion, how those are going to be addressed. So I think the motion satisfies that. And it sends a message that there needs to be more discussion.
Okay, that's the response, which is that we don't have a specifically articulated list. What we're asking for is further consultation with the Council over concerns about it. That's what it is. What it is. There you go. Okay, I see Councillor Curran, your hand is raised. Do you have a comment?
Well, it's just about the last motion, because I was concerned about us potentially saying we're against a target, which I'm not against a target, but I think that should have been a minimum. But I guess that could come up in the future. I feel, yeah, we're not amending that passed, right? So now you've moved on to.
Your worship, likely with this motion, we'll end up scheduling a staff meeting with Metro and then a council meeting with Metro to talk about the concerns that council have.
Okay.
Yeah, and to be clear about the 15%, so first of all, we did not pass sending our staff comments on to Metro Vancouver yet at this point. That was not supported. The 15%, again, I think to be fair to Councillor Bond's comments, it is a bit of wordsmithing about vagueness on it. Is it a total aggregate general view that we're seeking 15%, or is it intended to direct municipalities that if you don't have a target of 15%, then you're in conflict with the regional growth strategy in some degree? And I think that's where the opportunity for further discussion does exist. But no, I don't believe that the current 15% aggregate target is necessarily definitive, that all municipalities must meet or not exceed or whatever the case may be. It's not definitive. I don't know if does that address your concern, Councillor Curran?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think there's just a tension, and I think different members of council have different reasons for not supporting this potentially. And so I'm just wondering that the next step being staff to staff, will there be an opportunity? How will the opportunity for council to share their concerns about so that what would that process look like? Because I would love it to be a more visionary document. So how would that process happen?
Yeah, so the first discussion would be to discuss the resolution of council was saying we got some problems with the way this document's proposed. We would have some staff meetings. We would reflect some of the concerns that we heard from council. They would have to go back. They're going to have to mix that in with all the other concerns they've heard, and then we would try to set up a meeting with council to have a one-to-one discussion to say these are some of the issues that we really have a concern about. And that's likely not going to fit into Metro's timeline, but the fact of the matter is this is too important a document, given the timeline, that we need to make it right at the end of the day. And so we would have an initial staff discussion, then a subsequent discussion with council in which you have more time to take a look at this document and identify any other issues that you've got, so that Metro staff can hear that.
It would be great if we can get it up on screen as well so people can see the wording of the motion, but Councillor Bond, second time on the follow-up motion.
So basically, if I understand Mr. Stewart's reasoning, this is basically like a, just let me find the right words. It's like this is a bargaining chip for us to put some political pressure on Metro to slow down their process and take our input in. By saying no to the Metro, we don't support the plan at this time, even though we don't really have any concerns that are listed. We're just going to say we're not going to support it and use that as a chip to get more time out of Metro to talk about or to find concerns in the plan and then talk to them about them. I don't know. It's a very strange motion that if we don't actually have any concerns that we can list right now, that we're going to express that we have concerns and tell Metro that we're going to set up meetings about concerns that we don't actually have.
For my part, I have concerns. I've already expressed some of my concerns about the regional growth implications, both that they haven't addressed the issue of sprawl in the urban containment boundary, the issue identified by Councillor Murray that they're going to be endorsing, taking a whole bunch of land out of the ALR and putting it into light industrial and commercial. I have concerns about that. I have concerns about the fairness for the North Shore in terms of the fee structures within Metro Vancouver, and also that it doesn't come with any commitments for the region to support improvements to transportation to the North Shore explicitly. I get that that's a translate thing in part, but it seems like other municipalities are using the document to get deliverables for their community, and we're sitting here with again major regional deficits in regional infrastructure, and we need to have those issues addressed. But at the core of it all is Metro Vancouver had an obligation to provide a regional growth plan. What went into that plan was left to their own devices and their own interpretation, and they've included a significant number of areas that are not historically regional district matters. They're typically municipal matters. I get why they'd want to have an interest in it, but it is a change in their role.
That's a very succinct summary, and it makes a lot more sense that you've said it in that way now. So,
Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say that as far as concerns go, as Councillor Bond pointed out a couple of times, over 100-page report here at 2050, Metro 2050. So if we want to sit till midnight tonight, I could go through my concerns one by one, but I think it's better to just generally, and then if we can have a meeting with them as well and our staff meet with them, I think we'll be able to put the pieces together that way instead of sitting here forever tonight trying to list them.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Murray.
Well, I think you've laid out a number of items, Mayor Little, but obviously the budget and the cost of this plan, again, cumulative totals, how we are going to service the sprawl that continues to creep, and the transportation model. Growth paying for growth. For instance, we don't have DCCs for water. And the issue of additional DCCs within Metro Vancouver and the regional budget on top of what the local municipalities are paying, on top of the cost of infrastructure that the provincial government is bringing in. You know, we have to get our heads around, you know, the finance and the finance reform that is needed. I mean, we talk about it at a provincial level. You know, the affordable housing. You know, it's not keeping pace with the amount of housing that we're losing. You know, even region wide, it's not keeping pace with the amount of housing we've lost in the municipality over the last 10, 15 years. And then ongoing consultation throughout the region. So, you know, municipalities and our communities understand what's coming. You know, the amount of a change that is on the doorstep is massive, and these numbers are big, and the implications are huge. And, you know, we need to be able to understand how Metro Vancouver's plan fits in with local municipalities, OCPs and local plans, but also how we fit into Metro Vancouver. And, you know, at the very beginning of this term, there was a lot of discussion on, you know, who is Metro Vancouver? What is it? It's changed over the years a lot. It's gotten a lot bigger. It's taking on more and more you know, issues. And I think there was within this report, they talked about a parking plan for the region. I mean, you know, why do we have them? Let's go back and just understand what the identity of Metro Vancouver is, because I think it's a bit muddy right now. And so all of those things are part of how we move forward, and how we move forward is this plan. And we need to be clear on it. And, you know, this, there is no real deadline. I mean, the municipalities are Metro Vancouver, and if we have concerns about this plan, we have to bring them forward. We have to talk to planning, we have to talk to the board, and we need to be able to, you know, present our concerns. And it doesn't matter how long it takes. We need to get this right so we can move forward.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Forbes. Okay, your hand was up, sorry. Okay. I think we've had a good go round of this, both the first time and on the follow-up motion. So I see no further speakers. I'm going to call the question on the motion. All those in favor? And contrary minded? Okay, the motion passes with Councillor Hanson opposed. Okay, thank you very much, Council. That completes the regular business of the meeting tonight. We do have an opportunity still for time-wise for reports from councillor staff. Mr. Stewart, do you have any reports?
No, Your Worship.
Okay, members of council wishing to make a report, put your hand up. I see Councillor Forbes. Councillor Forbes, go ahead. Oh, you're muted, Councillor, sorry.
We haven't made reports in a little while, so it was kind of hard figuring out, but I just wanted to mention a few. I went down to where the new fire hall is being built, and we had the opening ceremonies there with Councillor Back and yourself, Mayor. I also represented you because you couldn't make it at Argyle School for the dedication up there of the welcoming post, and that was really special time. Both my kids went through Argyle School in the old Argyle, so it's nice to know that parents won't get lost on 5 different floors in the future. So that was well attended and it was very nice. Also, I mentioned earlier, I attended the Council of Council Metro's meeting last weekend, I think it was. I went up to and attended the Upper Capilano Edgemont Community Association's meeting last Friday night. And it was well attended and they had 3 speakers there. And it was great to finally, with all this COVID stuff, it was really nice to be able to connect with community members that you haven't been able to connect with or see in a long time. So they're moving along quite well. And I really enjoyed myself there at their AGM as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Murray. Oh, Councillor Forbes, sorry.
I was just going to mention one other thing. This Wednesday, I'm going to, just hang on just a sec. This Wednesday, I am going to a electrification plan, a clean future powered by water. So I'll report on that next meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes. Councillor Back.
Oh, did you miss me?
Sorry.
Did I put my hand down?
Sorry, Councillor Murray was up first. Sorry, Councillor Murray, go ahead.
Thank you. I went to visit the Family Services of the North Shore's Christmas Bureau last week and had a lovely visit with the staff there. And they're collecting donations for their Christmas Bureau. They have it set up in our old Delbrook to offer the opportunity for their clients to come and do some Christmas shopping. Last year, they served 1,100 families on the North Shore. And I would like to put a plug in for their need for gift cards or suitable donations for youth between the ages of 14 and 18. Those shelves are a bit bare. They're harder to shop for, and they find it harder to gather donations for that group of young people. They get a lot of toys for little kids, but they really do need some assistance in that regard. So you know, if you've got some change to support North Shore Family Services as one of your donation lists this year, you might want to consider them. They've got this really great program that they've just launched last week, and here's the box. It's called Hug a Box, and or a Hug in a Box. And basically, you can phone them and you can pick up some of these boxes. I picked up 8, and I know our clerk's department has 20 in the clerk's department that they're going to be filling. And basically, you fill it for a family. Maybe it's a movie night, maybe it's a games night. And basically, it's just something for the family to do during the holidays. And it's what Christmas would mean to you. There was some examples of people putting, family recipes with measuring cups and sprinkles to make cookies. And you put a nice little card in and it goes to a family. So if you want to give back to the community in some way, this is a great idea. And it's festive and it just feels good helping families on the North Shore. And so that's my report. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Murray. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Your Worship. And yeah, just to summarize a couple of things, appreciate Councillor Murray talking about family services in the Christmas Bureau. I met with their representatives as well on the 19th, and I went to the Christmas Bureau last year, and was just amazed by the scale of it, and how much of a service they provide to so many families across our community, across the whole North Shore. Also attended the Edgemont Upper Capilano Community Association AGM on the 22nd. We had a Manova meeting the night before that. We're hoping that any day now the museum will be open. Wes, our director, says before the holidays, but they have had some deficiencies with the build out. Mainly it's an HVAC issue at this point, where they can't keep a constant humidity and temperature, and particularly in the temporary exhibit where they're going to have rotating exhibits coming through. It's really important that they have that steady temperature and humidity. So we're hoping that hopefully in the next month it will be opening. Everything's ready to go. Staff is in place. The facility is looking fantastic. Last week I had I attended an event called Youth Taking Charge, which was organized by City Hive as well as SFU Public Square. And it was talking to 3 younger adults representing different parts of the community. There was a young coordinator with Hogan's Alley Society, a young woman from the Sliced Mango Collective. She's a Filipina Canadian, as well as a representative from Hub Cycling and the Renters Advisory Committee. And they were just talking about some issues around the municipal election and what's important to them, how elected officials could be better engaging with younger people. And they talked about some fairly, important things like just simplifying the language used and the jargon that is a barrier in terms of some younger people understanding politics and policy. And so I think this was just one of several events that will be coming up, led by City Hive, but really enjoyed that and got some good ideas from that.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Curran.
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to report on our climate committee has started. We had our first meeting last week. That's a district committee, and we had so many amazing applicants apply for it. And so we're hopeful that more will be on the next committee. It's a 1-year term, but just really, really excited about connecting with folks in our community that are so passionate and skilled and knowledgeable and ready to go. So that's really exciting, and wanted to thank staff for all their hard work getting that prepared. And then I also attended a municipal climate justice webinar from young folks' perspective. What was important for municipal folks to consider in policy in terms of climate justice, and it was really great. It was the BC Council for International Cooperation, BCCIC, and they are a network that engages sustainable development and social justice issues. And I was really blown away, and I think it's recorded, so I'm happy to share it with anyone if they want to do it. But that was what was on my list.
Thank you, Councillor Curran. At my peril, I'm going to just make a quick report about yesterday's activities. It was a great time recognizing Halloween in our community, and I probably was my last year taking kids around. As a politician, I say door knocking, but I think it's trick or treating around the community. My son and his friends, we took them around quite successfully, I would say, and it was really great to see. One feature of Halloween that I think is changing, I think it's a really good thing for our community, is there were a ton of houses where people came out of the house and they sort of sat out front with a bucket and some chairs and chatted with everybody as they came up, rather than the old knock on the door. Instead, it was just open out in front, neighbors chatting with neighbors, and a really great atmosphere. The weather really helped, and I was very happy with the opportunity to get out and chat with neighbors and meet with people. It was a lot of fun. So again, it was a good, healthy family fun time, and I hope the kids all got their heart's desire. I feel sorry for the school district, because they usually save their professional development day for the day after Halloween, and this year it went a week earlier. And so all of the teachers had to deal with sugared up kids with no sleep. So I'm sure today was a challenge, but great fun was had in our neighborhood, that's for sure. Okay, council, that's it for my reports tonight, and I see no other hands at this point. And
Move adjournment.
Adjournment has been moved by Councillor Murray. I accept. Thank you all so much for participating. Thank you to the members of the public that participated as well. Have a fantastic week.
Good night.